Oh.
Are we all ready? It's not written for you, because it has another meeting. It says you're not lifted, so it's already. So this is good for me.
Call the meeting of the Sunset Empire Transportation District Board work session for Saturday,
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't have to.
November 5th. Order.
Order.
We've all had lunch
Yes. That time one?
and now.
I'm sorry I killed the last of the coffee, so
Oh.
somebody needs a little pick me up.
That's, I've got coffee, I'm good at it.
Or are we in the public? We're at a public meeting, yes.
So you can't call me names.
I was straight.
Okay. Mary, would you take roll call, please?
Yeah. Commissioner Legria.
Aye.
Commissioner Withers.
Aye.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner McDonald.
Present.
Commissioner Booth Smith
Here.
and Commissioner Nino.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, before we get started into the discussion we're going to have about the legislative advocacy policy and then the strategic planning, thought it'd be nice to just, because we're all in the same room, it's so nice. But just to do a little quick icebreaker, what I thought of what we could do is if we could go around the room and everybody could say or tell us something about yourselves that nobody else knows.
Oh,
could be-
yeah, world.
It could be a story from your past. It could be, that first time you got arrested, any of those kind of, no, just kidding. So Mary said she wanted to go first. Your name isn't Mary.
Don't get me started. Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Tell us something about Mary Parker that we don't know.
I've been here 10, 12 years now. 10, 11 years. I don't keep many secrets. You live in a small town. There are no
Yeah,
secrets.
that's true.
And there's such thing as confidentiality. I don't know if you knew I was a lab tech for 15, 20 years at Rural Hospital. In between there and Asperger Clinic, I went to school up in Tacoma. I was a scientist since I can remember being born. I love to go out and get samples out of the woods and bring them home and not dissect things particularly, but I just grew stuff and did stuff and I was kind of a chemist, biologist. But I don't think you probably know that about me, that I just absolutely love to take blood out of people. I absolutely love needles. I love them. It was really hard for me to give them up. I dream about sticking people in the arm again.
You get the prize already.
I'm really happy you've been working from home for the past 2 years.
Hence, I'm really good at it, and I can't stand it when people have a bad blood draw, because you
Yeah.
should not ever allow someone. So you tell someone when they're going to draw your blood, you've got one chance. And if you can't get it, go get somebody that can, because it changes the scenario. If they don't feel like they're good at it and they can't feel a vein, then they'll go get somebody, but never let anybody poke you more than 2 times maximum before they go get somebody else, because you just shouldn't suffer ever, ever.
Remember when I had the traveling nurse come out for life insurance policy
Yeah.
and draw my blood and how she screwed up both arms, how bad it was. Don't you remember that?
No.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful. That was a bad blood draw.
Yeah. I thought about doing that.
She was like Marty Fife with a needle trying to kick one over. It was not good.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I love needles. Okay. All right. I'm not a medic. Well, it was when Scott was sick. We had home health, and they would try to draw his blood, and I get it. So they let me. It was really cool. They let me draw his blood. I would always get. Anyway, okay, that's it.
Pamela, what about you? What do we know about Pamela?
Well, in the 1970s or somewhere, around there. Jobs are very tight. So I went to a employment agency. I was offered a job as a go-go girl. And she will teach dancing to this man who was traveling with his son cross country, and he would teach me dancing to his son. I declined both jobs.
I was gonna say, picture, we want pictures. Go boots and all.
Big deal.
Could possibly go wrong. That's awesome. Charles?
Well, other than I used to be a white woman. You know, man. Other than that, I would say, I would say I've traveled to 46 of the states. Of 50
Oh,
states,
wow.
and 56 of them. And the other thing is I signed up for ancestry.com about 6 months ago. And I found that my third dominant gene is Irish. I had no idea.
Really?
I had no idea. And so I proceeded to start drinking more whiskey. Whole family. I know I was my third dominant gene was Irish.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's kind of cool. Took me by surprise.
Okay, gee,
Rebecca.
this is like, not fair for an extrovert like me. Which story should I choose?
I know.
Get together more often here, and ask this at every meeting, but, scandalizing people, with my stories used to be kind of what I used to do, but, so I guess that there's a story that's too long, so I'm just gonna make it a short one, is that, you guys, maybe some of you know that I'm also an artist. And so I feel like I kind of live in two worlds. I really enjoy community development, absolutely. I was born into it with my family. With a good long line of do-gooders and public service people. My dad was a history teacher, high school history teacher, and my mom worked for the Department of Energy at Bonneville and was a management trainer. So, that kind of, was born into that. But I also, was born an artist. And so, for many, many years, I've kind of struggled with, okay, either or, but then I realized, it doesn't have to be either or, it can be both. And so what I do, and this is just an example of that, I try to find a balance, but seems like in the last few years, kind of the community service side has far out, weighed the art, there's a little bit of dust formulating in my studio I have in Gerhardt. But what I do every year is I say yes to things because then I know that I'm going to have to do it for art. And so every year, so what I did this summer was I taught 2 art classes, and I love teaching art, and I love teaching art to kids.
Oh.
So, because, there's no barriers with kids, they just totally get it, and they don't have the egos, like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, So, Cannon Beach has an arts association that has their art camp every year, and we tried valiantly for 2 summers to do the virtual, which was a disaster. It's hard to do art virtually. But I taught 9 kids this summer down there in Cannon Beach. They were like 9 and 10-year-olds, and then I taught some adults at Trail Sand Camp in Gerhardt. And I know I shouldn't say, but the kids were way more fun. Like, be I'm gonna go to the bathroom and never come back, you know, and just like wouldn't, you know, they were like squirrel, you know, I wouldn't pay attention. And I know this is post-pandemic, but you know, you'd think that adults could have kind of controlled themselves a little bit more. But I really, I'm in my element, truly, when I am working with kids and working, and I'm not coaching, not leading, but facilitating their creativity. And to me, you know, and I think that, you know, and it's also really pretty wonderful when there's that synchronicity or whatever it's called, that flow going on with adults too, when we're doing things just like this, you know, where we're being creative and making things happen. So little insight for me.
Well, maybe I would have been more successful as an artist had you been one of my teachers back in preschool and kindergarten. Because I distinctly remember that when it came time for finger painting, you weren't getting me putting my fingers in that craft. There was no way. I refused. I absolutely refused to finger paint. And I think that's, you know, morphed into, yeah, I can't use crayons and color within the lines either. I never got.
Somebody, you know, like when you think about it, we just get so very little instruction, you know, about art and being creative.
Right.
And it really should be something joyous that you carry throughout your life.
And I agree with that. And I also believe that with music too.
Yeah.
You know, I feel very fortunate that I grew up in a musical family, you know, and how important music was to shape my life.
You know, not every kid is academic, you know, math and science were challenges for me. But, you know, I really felt, you know, in my element and had something that I could offer, you know, through art, you know, and K-12. Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Tracy.
I just wanted to, back also in the early 70s, my mom came into my room and said, Tracy, you either need to go to college or you need to go in the military. And I said, and the reason, single parent mom of 6 kids, she needed bed space. So everybody in my family thought that I would just bounce right out and go to college in Southern, you know, the high school system in Ashland is programmed so that you can be a semester type person and just zoom right out of high school. And I knew that I didn't have grades to do that. And my draft number was 3.
Oh,
So,
in there, done there.
so I headed to the military and was headed for Vietnam. Got as far as Okinawa, and then the Army guys said, no, we're going to take that section. And as a aforementioned, Mr. Forrester was a lieutenant in my receiving unit. He would have been my lieutenant when I got there. And he said, you didn't want to go there. And I said, I understand. So I came back home and back into an air base and I was a field cook. And they just didn't really have any jobs for field cooks in the squadrons. And so they decided they'd try to make me a plane captain. Then in their infinite wisdom, the warrant officer Wilbur found he had these cooks over on the computer list. And so I ran, I happened to gather all these cards and I went over to his office and he said, well, Donald, what do you know about mess supply? And I said, nothing, sir. And I said, well, you're going to learn. And so you take this course. So I learned all that. And then all of us were PFCs and 2 of us, we all took our tests, we all flunked because we were tired. We'd been partying, you know, and then so anyway, we ended up flunking by 1 point each, and there were 2 billets, and billets have to be filled no matter what. So 1 billet was for a guard duty over in ADAC, and it got to be dress. Well, I had a set of dress blues, and the other guy from Mississippi didn't. And I said, you know where ADAC is? And he said, yeah. And he says, but I get to wear dress blues and I get to be a gate guard. And I said, okay. So the other job was cooking for the general. And and I had no real inclining. I was a pretty good baker and I enjoyed that. But so I went ahead and done that. Went over and so this was, you remember this person grew up in a culturally different group, whites and all of my bosses were Afro-American. And they were the neatest people I ever met. And they got me through all of the duties of doing that kind of thing, because I was the junior white boy. And, and
Is that a song?
and so I learned a lot about getting along with other people in that time period. We served a lot of neat people. Sergeant Tribble, the staff sergeant that would never go out and go to the parties, he would be in the kitchen because he hated doing that. He was married to one of the Fifth Dimension.
Really?
Oh, wow.
So we all got party gigs out at Laguna Beach. And I met a whole lot of it was my coming out.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
That's an awesome story.
Cool. Debbie.
You've got a lot of them, but I guess I'll share an Alaskan one. And so I lived in Alaska for 10 years. And I did a lot of different jobs up there, but I think probably the one that I really enjoyed the most, even though I do get seasick, was working on commercial fishing boats. And I did a halibut season, that it was a 48-hour season. We were gone for a week. For one reason, the skipper has to get everybody out of town so they'll sober up before it actually starts. And then the 48 hours, I was the cook on the boat. And there was myself, and then there were seven crewmen and the skipper, and I was the only female. And my bunk was at the kitchen table, at the galley table, because there was no other bunks for me. So that was it. And we did the 48-hour halibut season, which nobody gets any rest on. You're up that 48 hours. And even if I wasn't in the galley cooking, I was out taking bait off of hooks as they were coming up. So we get done with our 48 hours and everything's cleaned up, everything's stored away, and we're headed back into town. And I've got the galley all cleaned up and I'm thinking I'm going to get a nap because everybody else is in bed except for the skipper. And he comes down and he goes, "You're on wheel watch." And I'm going, "Excuse me." He goes, "Come on, I'm going to show you." Because these boats all have automatic everything. So he just sets everything and I'm supposed to look for other boats that are in my way and logs and stuff like that at night after we've all been up. I'm not sure. So I'm sitting there, staying awake, thinking, how in the hell did I get into this position? Because I'm responsible for all these and this $3 million boat, and it's dark out there. So, but I have a lot of stories about Alaska. That was good. And I did that one, and then for 3 summers I tendered salmon, which was a lot of fun. So for another day. Alaska was a really, really good time for me. 10 years up there.
Wow. For me, I've also done a lot of things. I went to school for film. So I studied visual arts with a filmmaking major. And I love film and TV. I watch copious hours of it. Like now I know that it's not a waste of time, but when I was little, everybody's like, how can you let that girl watch so much TV? I got good grades, so my parents didn't care. But once I graduated and I tried getting into the industry, I didn't want to work in that. So I tried going into production. I worked on a couple of documentaries for Discovery Channel, and I'm like, I don't like this. And the pay was terrible. They expect you to work for very little for a long time. And I couldn't do that. I needed money. So I ended up, I had heard, this was back in New York, I had heard that, hey, you can make money waiting tables. And I had never done that. I lied a lot to get that first job. And I ended up working in fine dining for 13 years and loved it. Absolutely fell in love with the industry, with food, with chefs, with the beauty of like how you can create an experience for a person or for a family, and just the beauty of it. Then I got very much into wine, and I was going to become a sommelier, a wine expert. And I got into the Master of Sommeliers program. I passed the first test. I was going to get my second. And then I decided not to do it, but I could have been a certified sommelier in New York City. And then I moved here, and then I started working in restaurants. This is what I knew, but I knew that I did not want to be a server in my 40s, because it's a very physical job. And I didn't know what to do. And this area, there's not a lot of options. So I was kind of worried about that. And then my partner, Jeff, said, you're bilingual. Like you can just get a job just because of that. I'm like, no way. He's like, yeah, like we don't have a lot of people. I'm like, really? He's like, just with that, you probably have a pick of a lot of different things. And so I went to Consejo Hispano. I had to walk by it, and I had seen their office, and I'm like, I'm gonna go there and ask, like, you know, where can I go? Where can I even start looking? And I went in there, and it's like, yeah, hi, you know, I'm Colombian, I'm bilingual, and I'm trying to get a job, but I don't have a ton of here. We need you. I'm like, really, for what? We have, you know, Oregon health plans. I'm like, I've never worked in health. I've never done any of that. Like, doesn't matter. You're bilingual, and we need you. And so that's how I started in kind of social services, even though I had no experience, no background, and it's been amazing. It's been fascinating, and I love it. And I got to be a part of the transit district and understand about local government and like all of these things that I would have never even experienced. But then because of all of this background and my customer service and like all of these different things, it's like, yeah, I even got offered a job with Oregon Health Authority. I'm like, how? Like my resume, like how? And they were like, it's just lived experience. So that was one of the best things that I've experienced in Oregon, is that I've truly felt that people value you for what you've done and what's your experience. How do you connect with what we need, instead of give me your resume first and then I'll let you know if we're interested. So yeah, I've done a lot of things.
That's
If you need a wine recommendation, I can do with that.
Good to know. That's cool. I'll share what I thought of sharing. So most of you know that I used to be in retail. I had a long career at Costco, but before I was at Costco, my very first job I got when I was up in Everett, Washington. We moved up there in the middle of my junior year in high school, and I went from a school down in Reedsport where total population of the school was I don't know, like 500 kids. And I go to Everett High School where my graduating class was 444 kids. So total culture shock. I didn't have any friends there. So I knew after my junior year in high school, I wanted to get a job. I wanted to start working, do something. And so just half a mile from our house was a small Northwest drugstore chain called Payless Drugstore. Now they're Rite Aids. But back then it was just a regional chain, just throughout the Northwest, Oregon, Washington, Idaho. And I got a job working for them.
Merry Christmas.
And exactly, yes, I was Frosty the Snowman. I will admit to that, but it was really cool. It was a great company to work for. I knew immediately that I wanted to make it a career. And so I never went to school. Once I got out of high school, I never went to school. After I got out of high school, I wanted to get into management, and an opportunity came up out of the corporate office in Wilsonville to be on the setup crew. And the setup crew is a group of people that would go around the chain and set up new stores, do all the merchandising, or remodel stores. We do merchandising resets. And at that time, Payless Drugstore Northwest bought Payless Drugstores California based out of Oakland. And so it really, it made a large West Coast drugstore chain. So I applied for that setup crew, and a guy came up from the corporate office, interviewed me, and initially said no because of my age, because they never had anybody that was 18 years old work on the setup crew. Usually it was people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. With more of an emphasis on 30s rather than 20s. So I was told no, I was too young because it's too many hours. And when, you know, after they worked a long day setting up stores and remodeling stores, they generally went to the hotel bar and ate at the bar, had dinner at the bar, and that would have been a problem for me. So I was told no, but a couple months later, they called me up and they said, you know what? We still need somebody. We're gonna try it out. So I got the opportunity to work on the setup crew for a year and work all over the West Coast. Mind you, I'm 18. I'm an 18-year-old kid that's got a full expense account. I get to go home every weekend. So like when I was working down in California, I got to fly home every weekend. And the coolest thing that I had, I love this story, is this was back when airline tickets were on paper. And I carried with me what they called a speed ticket. And this speed ticket was just in case the travel department didn't get my airline tickets to me in time. It was a blank airline ticket. I'm an 18-year-old kid that carried a blank airline ticket that all I had to do was call the airline, make the reservation, and fill in the blanks.
Wow.
I could have traveled anywhere. If I never had to use it, but just knowing that was in my briefcase was pretty darn. I was 18.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I turned 19, and it was interesting because at one point I got sent down to Concord, California, over in the East Bay, and that store had a lot of problems, and it was after the buyout. And so I get there, and I had a crew of 3 that went with me. And as soon as I walked in the floor, I called the corporate office, called my boss. I said, I need everybody. I needed a dozen people because it was so out of control. When they got their delivery trucks in, they had to unload everything outside. And then at the end of the day, before they went home, they'd use a forklift and just shove everything across the floor into the warehouse. And it was a mess. So here I was, at that point I was 19. I had to take away the keys of the building from the store manager. He lost his job. The regional manager also lost his job. He was supposed to come in over a weekend. I told the crew, I said, we're not going home this weekend. We got to work. And so he was going to come in, but he felt it was more important to fly with the Raiders in a away football game. So didn't get to see him again. He's no longer with the company, but that was pretty cool being that young and having that responsibility and learning about management on the job. So, but having that blank airline ticket was, I love that story. It was neat.
You don't do those.
Huh?
They don't do those anymore.
No. And we had a really good travel department, so they were not airline tickets. So.
And in my travels, traveling in the valley and things like that, I have run into people that have worked with our executive here, and really a lot of them. They missed you when you was on.
Oh, yeah. That time with Payless, though, when it was just a, small Northwest company, and it was just a dynamite company to work for.
I've heard that, and I have some friends that worked at that time, and it was a good company.
Oh, it was a great company, they ended up, well, after setup crew, I landed in St. Helens for a couple of years, and then they shipped me down to the Bay Area. And that was the beginning of the end for me, because just after I got down there, Payless got bought by Kmart. And so, all those things start transpiring and things change, culture changes, so that was unfortunate. And then I found this other company that the grass was greener on the other side of the fence. And that was the predecessor to Costco, Little Price Club. That's how I got into that industry, so. But then I wanted to get out of the Bay Area and get back to work again, so Costco was nice enough to pick me up, so.
Thankfully, humans have a variety of talents.
Yeah.
And, I don't think any one of them is more, important than the other. We've got to have a variety of people.
Yeah.
I remind myself of that when I started feeling puny about, being an artist. That where would the world be without art or music?
Oh, Yep, exactly.
Not have flavor that makes it.
And I was worried when I left Costco, it was time for me to leave and move on and do something else. I didn't have a job when I left. I kind of knew what I wanted to do. And I started, putting my resume out there and stuff. And the one thing that I didn't have was I didn't have a degree, and 8 years ago, you needed to have a degree if you wanted to get a job somewhere. So, now I see it where it's not a requirement anymore. Now it's, life experience.
What have you done?
Yeah, exactly.
What have you done?
Can equate to having that degree, so that I feel better about that now. My life experience did count.
I just, in a comment on that, I just noticed that on job postings, they say on there, no degree required. It's on there. Amazing.
Life experiences.
Yeah.
To me, it's more important. It is.
I'll take that over a degree any day.
Yeah.
But there are things that only a degree can provide you, or technical training.
Mhm.
I mean, how do you learn how to weld if you haven't had the training?
Right.
And I think in higher ed, there's just a lot of, I've benefited from my undergrad and graduate degree because they provided me with a lot of breadth of experience in terms of
Mhm.
the things that I learned. Now, I had to put that into practical use, I worked in public sector for many years, and I used that, and I think I needed some of those specific skills about public administration and management,
Mhm.
public management.
Yeah.
But, if only it should be a blend. We should be able to, give people an opportunity even before they have all of that experience or education to get an entry level, get into the system.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I use Jennifer as an example. Jennifer started with us. She was a bus driver. She came to us from Napa School District where she was a school bus driver. And it was, I identified her very early on when she got hired that this is going to be somebody that's going to grow with us. And she did throughout the years, and then getting to spend, a year with Paul, to end up taking over for him as COO. It worked out perfect.
It is an apprenticeship, isn't it? So
Oh, yeah.
you're building up through this, within that industry.
Yep.
Very important.
No doubt.
But if you apply for dancing, you don't need experience.
And I have the importance of having a second language. I was a sophomore in high school, and I unfortunately had a girlfriend who looks a lot like Elizabeth, who wanted to take French lessons. So we took French. And if I could have done anything with things that happen later in life, if I had Spanish, I could have understood that, and I could have,
Yeah.
but, Yeah.
I don't, when I was in school, I don't think Spanish was even offered.
I know.
It was not, it was German and French.
We had,
German.
we had,
German, I
we
learned
had
German.
Spanish and French down the road for it. I took Spanish. I didn't do well. I don't know.
It should be required, even just to learn the basics of a language. You
Yeah.
can communicate.
Yeah,
It's surprising how much you can communicate if you show that you have some.
Yeah.
Understanding, knowledge of the language. And I don't think it's a requirement anymore for foreign service. Some president put that out. It may have been reinstated, I don't know. But you know so much about a culture.
Yeah.
When you know the language.
Absolutely.
Yeah, even in our church, we have French, we have Spanish, and we have English, and those, yeah, all the services are published and written in those three languages.
Very cool. Well, thanks for indulging me in that. I learned something about it. It's interesting. We could probably go on for days and days talking about those different experiences that we have. So still would have loved to have seen pictures of you and me. I'm never going to erase it.
So you say.
Now, I'll throw this in just because I heard this. I could not graduate from high school until I got a haircut. And so they said, no, so you may find it hard.
Did you have big hair?
Oh, yeah, we measured it 7 inches. And so, so they said we couldn't graduate this hair.
Wow.
So
Wow.
we figured out how to get this really green and pretty stuff. Tasted down. Compared to right now, you may find it. He saw a picture of me when I was 9. He says, "Who is that?"
Yeah.
I wasn't born a 68-year-old man. Turned into one.
We could have had a
I had hair one time. People may not find it hard to believe.
huh?
People may find it hard to believe you had hair.
Yeah, and my hair was your hair. I had really curly hair. I had in high school, I had a big fro. My fro was an angel food cake cut. We all kind of built this.
That's what it means anything when you get over it.
If I wanted to, I chose to shave, so.
I used to have a lot of hair.
Yeah, yeah, mine was not to do. Someday I'll have to find a picture and show it to you.
That would be a fun, round robin, is everybody, bring a picture of their youth.
Yeah.
Their picture.
Yeah,
That was good.
that's always fun to do, so.
Anyway, back up there. So-
All right, so let's talk about a couple of things. One thing that the board was introduced to at the September meeting was the policy for legislative advocacy. And you guys wanted to follow up today to talk about it, make sure everybody's comfortable with it. Again, just as a review, this was written by Special Districts Association of Oregon that were members, SDAO. And the purpose of it was because they found that when they would reach out to the 1,000+ special districts in Oregon to help during the legislative sessions to get letters of support or public testimony on different legislative things that were happening in Salem. They didn't get a very good response, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that special districts, we meet once a month. And timing is everything with legislative action, because once something's in committee, it needs to be, you need to be on top of it immediately. It's not like, okay, well, we've got to wait until next month's meeting so we can present to the board. It's long gone by then. So they wrote this policy to help guide the districts in setting up a framework where there could be action taken immediately. And we have it in here as the executive director or the board chair could do this on behalf of the district.
And when you say designate, that would be in the, if there was a need for someone else to step in.
Yeah, then the board chair could assign it to somebody else. Yeah. And so that's where we landed, and the only thing that I changed in here, and I gotta remember which. Oh, it was under policy principles on page 2, page 1 of 5, but red number 2. Policy principles, that first paragraph, the last sentence. The board of commissioners shall establish various advocacy priorities, and so long as the position fits with the advocacy priorities, after consultation with the board chair, staff may take a position without board approval. So I added that in there. The policy committee talked about that. So there was some accountability. You know, I couldn't just go rogue and weigh in on something. That I would review it with the board chair to get that, the board chair's permission to move forward. And then it would come back to the board afterwards, the after action item. One of the things that at the end of the policy, it talked about advocacy priorities, and they listed in here the different topics: revenue, finances, taxation is one.
What page are you?
I'm on page red number 5. Page 4 or 5 of the draft policies. Governance and accountability is another area. Human resources and personnel, and then infrastructure, innovation, investment. And then there was, when you got the draft policy back in September, there was the word other after this. Are there other ones that you could think of that are outside of these specific topics that you would want to have that flexibility to be able to respond to? And I don't know. I don't know of any off the top of my head. And I don't know if you guys thought about that.
You know, I really haven't taken much time to ponder this, but I am concerned about it. I did have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Maybe it is appropriate for this time. On page 2, legislative advocacy procedures, you know, the policy of the district to proactively monitor and advocate for legislation. So who is it that is doing this? And then let me just ask the rest of my questions I had too, is that have we, if you could give some, you know, historic context to how we've been doing this, and what are and have been our challenges in this area? Because I feel like, you know, the task of identifying opportunities and activating support for these things that we are, it's deceivingly simple. There's actually a lot of work involved with it. And I'm just wondering how that you can spell out for us how we have been doing it, and maybe where there's some gaps and how we can improve on it.
And you just said the right word there, the word gap. There's been gaps. We haven't locally been that structured as far as legislative activity. We have looked at when SDAO has put out a call for, you know, letters of support for certain legislation. We have provided some of those. Some of those were simple enough that I could bang out a letter and get it down there and let the board know afterwards. There's things that OTA will be working on this upcoming legislative section. OTA is the Oregon Transit Association, and they're lobbying. There will be some opportunities surrounding that are going to be important. We've already started working on that.
Things that have been identified.
Yes, there's going to be an ask from the OTA to increase the transit tax that funds the STIF program, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund. And so what we've been working on over the past few months that OTA has helped us with is getting our story out there. You know, what does our district do? What does our transportation district do? And so they put together, what was it, a four page report about Sunset Empire Transportation District, and they're doing that with all the transit districts in the state to explain to legislators what we do as transportation district. We're going to have a third new legislature this year. A third of the seats are changing. The entire leadership for the state of Oregon is changing this year. There's going to be a huge learning curve for everybody. And so that's why it's so important to get these type of stories out there, so they understand that we are a special district. They don't know what a special district is. If you ask anybody on the street, they don't know what a special district is. And that's incumbent on us to continue to share that story. And that's what really prompted SDAO to get on this, was when all the relief funding was out there. You know, you heard Frank talk about it, the conference down in Salem. Nobody thought about special districts. It was all going to cities and counties. We were an afterthought. It's just like, legislators would go, well, we never heard from special districts, you know, and that's why we now have a national presence, a national coalition of special districts. It's in its infancy, very small right now. It's just a handful of states, but it will continue to grow because people need to learn what districts are. Charles?
One of my many jobs I've had, I worked in Virginia's legislature for 12 years as legislative assistant. See, there's two things going on here. I think special district sounds intimate and cool to us, but to other people it sounds like something that isn't. It's not necessary. Special meaning it's occasional. I think first of all, we need to just stop saying we call ourselves transit. We are what we are, but when you talk to people, I think you have to say that we're the Placer County Transit. We're the transit system for Placer County, because in the end, special districts sounds like it's something that's not necessary, it's kind of special just because we're helping them out somehow. But
Right.
We are a transit. We are. Someone says, what do we run? I said, we run the buses. We run the buses in Placer County. We are the bus company in Placer County. So I think one of the things in the narrative, including talking to legislators, because legislators, they say they're, you know, they all think they're, you know, best things in sliced bread, but they really all aren't. Some are. Some understands the legislation, but a lot don't. But they know words and they know what they think things mean. Most of them would think. I hear here locally from some for a special district that, oh, so you guys are like occasional, or you like the
Auxiliary.
or the what's it called, the association, the association, we're some kind of a transit association. But we're not, but you know, we're the bus company.
Yeah.
And I think we need to, when we talk about that and special district. I'm proud of being in the special districts, and I think it does. We get gravitas for being there. But that's one discussion. The other discussion when you talk to legislators is we're the bus company.
Right.
Because I think that's a different, they hear that different.
So that's one of our priorities is telling our story.
Exactly. And that's something, when I got involved with the Public Transportation Advisory Committee several years ago, that's 6 or 7 years ago. My seat represents the Western rural providers. And I had been watching that since I got hired, and it was empty for a couple of years before I got appointed to it. And so my whole goal was to go to Salem to make sure that people understood what rural transportation is. Because you go down to Salem and you say, what is public transportation? It's TriMet and it's chariots in Salem. And that's what they think of. They don't realize the breadth or, you know, what we do as rural providers, how we're just as important as the big cities. You know, we're funded totally different than they are. They get the direct funding. Ours goes through ODOT before it gets parsed out to us. So, but it's important that they understand that public transit isn't just TriMet.
We're the bus company.
It's much more than the bus, you know. And so telling these stories is
So
crucial.
OTA is our champion.
Correct.
And we should be asking them. And, you know, telling them, you know, here's something you can use for lobbying.
Yeah, and that's what they've done. They coordinated that for us. So we've already got ours done. They've got it. I don't think I've sent that out to the board. Yeah, I'll get that out to the board.
We're an essential service. That's when we lose track of that. If we're not running buses, there's a lot of people getting around. getting anywhere. So we're an essential service.
Right.
As opposed to just,
That's true.
it's
Right.
a little bus company that kind of.
Well, you
pushes
look-
people around.
You look at when the pandemic started, you know, they
Yes,
talked about
exactly.
essential employees. Well, not only are we essential employees, but we're transporting all the
Transport.
essential
Yes.
workers that are out there. So again, telling those stories, it's gotta be at the forefront.
I was running for 12 years. It's all about narrative. You really have
Oh, yeah.
to write narrative. Because
And
there's so many other people yelling and screaming now.
Right.
You gotta tell your story where it separates itself. And,
Yeah, and that's where special districts lost out on direct funding through the relief plans, because they were all hearing from the cities and counties who had hundreds, if not thousands of, you know, lobbyists working for us, and we've got one. And that's-
And
that's
they
it.
represent all these different various special districts, right?
Right.
Everything from
Mhm.
the burial, that's one, you know, I find that very interesting. There's a
Cemetery,
cremation burial special district to bus service, which is, that's a space, that's beautiful.
oh, yeah,
PR people, I mean, I hope they're good at reading a story or whatever, you know, OTA, because it can be kind of boring material. So it's gotta make it compelling.
Mark and Hasina, who are the lead lobbyists for Special Districts Oregon, they're dynamite. When you're at a conference, you definitely want to sit in on their sessions where they recap or they talk about what they're going to be working on. You know, that all comes from the legislative committee. You know, they help guide, you know, what direction they want the lobbyists to go there, but they're outstanding.
What was the name again? I'm sorry. Who were we talking about?
Mark and Hasina,
Okay.
they're very well plugged in down the same. So they do a great job for us.
I just want to say, really think it's a good point that Charles brought up about spectrum, because it does connotate different things.
Right.
And not what you wanted.
Right. It's,
So what do we need to do?
it's a catch-all. Well, you guys wanted to have this discussion, you know, if there's not any other changes, you don't have to do anything. It'll be back before you in December for adoption. That way, we're ready to go in January when the legislature starts meeting, that we can react to some of the calls that SBAO puts out for support. Pamela?
I'd just like to make a comment that, if possible, to present an issue to the board, you don't necessarily have to vote on it if you're on a time crunch, but to give comments on, you know, different perspectives. And the other is, would the board be willing to have special meetings, you know, determine the time for those things, you know, as an option before, you know, there's no input from the board.
Yeah, well, sometimes these are actions that have to be taken the same day.
Yeah.
And we can't call a meeting the same day.
No, I understand that, but there's sometimes, you know, there's an issue that's brewing.
Right.
And that's.
So having discussions ahead of time about it. We're-
And I think when Jeff needs to, if we'll agree that if it's something
Oh, yeah.
that we're approaching, Bill's gonna leave committee and we need to talk to someone, we all understand that. We have to give him the purpose that if it has to do with the transit district and funding or whatever, that Jeff needs the ability to go ahead and vote and go ahead and do that. Advise us, sure that what's
Sure.
happened, but I think we can't. Because nothing he's gonna do in requesting the money, that's gonna change anything how we operate functionally, right? So all he would be doing would be the.
But there could be things, you know, and that's one of the topics when they talk about HR personnel. You know, making sure that there's, you know, that we're being defensive with some of the legislation that may be getting proposed that will be very burdensome for organizations our size and smaller. You know, they don't necessarily understand how we operate and what kind of an effect that would. We don't have a huge staff of people, you know, especially a huge administrative staff, that all of a sudden you put a new program or a new requirement into place. Well, how are we gonna do that? How logistically, how
A
are we
new
gonna do it?
regulation.
Yeah, and how are we gonna pay for it? It's gonna be one of those unfunded mandates.
And that's one of those funding things, where it's gonna cost us. That will cost us. And
Right.
Anything else would be trying to gain assets or gain funding.
Right.
But those two things are kind of tied together, right? So,
They can't be that.
I mean, they don't necessarily have to be, but one proposal could be, you guys need to set up this new procedural thing that's more hours and everything. And the other one just could be something that we're trying to get in on a bill that has funding to bring in a person. To do those kind of things.
So the Western Rural Providers, now, does that sound like kind of a consortium of, so that they could, be, like there'd be strength in numbers? And so if there was an issue that would be pertinent too, that's something that we need for these smaller groups like ourselves individually, a particular special district like SUTD, are we working with other partners so that we have a bigger voice?
Through the OTA we do.
Okay.
Now, PTAC that I'm on, Monday will be my last meeting on PTAC. I'm a year beyond being expired, my CEOs. We're not advocacy. We can't go before the legislature and lobby. We advise the Oregon Transportation Commission and the Oregon Department of Transportation on all things public transportation. And the Western rural providers, I represent everybody on the west side of the mountains, all the transit agencies on the west side. But we don't lobby. We can't.
What about, public sentiment, where we are educating the public and we are, inviting, or I don't know, this is kind of gray area of us lobbying our local constituents, but saying, really, we talk to your legislator, we encourage, I think we should be in the business of encouraging our riders and all community to support us and to talk to your legislators, write your legislators and say how important this is. Let people know what are opportunities that we're trying to line ourselves up for in terms of funding, or I don't know.
It could be, various things. So there'll be a lot, if you've been in the legislature.
We're out in the dark, so the public is in the dark. People don't know, how do they get educated?
Right. And that's incumbent upon us to provide information. I mean, I can go out, I can provide all the information in the world, but encouraging people to get involved, that we need help with.
Yeah, I think it's really vital. I think that is part of our priority. We were saying that, the PR piece of who we are.
Oh, Diane, I think you.
Oh, yeah.
I have a few questions. Well, one, I only learned about special districts not even when I joined the board, when I went to that first SDAO conference, that I actually got to understand what a special district is and how many different ones there are. So I agree, we need to have the public to actually champion special districts, not just us, but libraries and, even fire districts. Because I see what you're saying about being like, hey, we're the transit providers. But often the public perception is that we're a transit company, that we are a business and that we have complete independence on how we run things, when in reality we don't. So, kind of really understanding, I know it's a long-term project or goal, but high school children should study in school what special districts are, especially when you live in smaller communities. In a big city, I was talking with Charles about this on our ride here. In a big city, it's difficult to understand how local government impacts your everyday life. When you're in a big city, you see the headlines, it's about the mayor, and it's all of this big thing. Everything seems so big and so kind of homogeneous. Am I saying that word correctly? So you don't see how on each little space, each region, there's a commissioner, there's a city commissioner, there's all of these smaller things that are actually deciding stuff for your everyday lives. But then in smaller, like rural areas where we're at, that, like, if a group of people don't decide to have a library, there's no library. That's it. Like, there has to be a group of people that are passionate enough to actually go through all the hoops to get some money so that we can open 2 days a week. And people don't realize that, like, it's a huge struggle. Like, there's a lot of people that are volunteering and giving their time so that we can have that.
Right.
But to teach that to people who are working and doing their thing, that's kind of rough. So kids in high school, that's where we should start trying to kind of getting them to understand. In smaller communities, it's it's very hands-on, handmade, homemade
They
stuff.
need to bring back civics.
Exactly.
Right.
So then if all of those people who are now in office or running for office, if they had seen that in high school, they would be a little more aware that there are all of these different services that they don't come up from high government. Like, a lot of motivated people have to do that. So let's champion them so that we can, get that done. So that I know that is like a 10-year, 15-year plan, but if we don't get it started soon, that's never gonna happen. Now, something that I don't quite understand is the role of ODOT in this whole thing. Because I don't know if we work closely, but we have we're closely overseen.
Yeah,
Oversight.
they have oversight over it.
Yeah, they have a lot of oversight over us. However, does ODOT not intervene, like they don't advocate for transit districts? Like, why is there a need for an OTA if there's ODOT?
ODOT can't lobby. They'll have, because they're a state agency. They can work behind the scenes, they can provide information. ODOT has a seat on OTA board. They're part of that. It's Karen Criswell and I think Susan, I think goes to those meetings as well. But they have to be very careful on how they deal with the legislature.
Why?
I'll give you an example. We had the proposed widening of the city of Seaside to do 4-lane. And there were 3 or 4 of the staff from the state that explained all the situation and even worked. I mean, they really tried to give everybody all the perspectives. But what it came down to it was other people objected to the fact that they were a state agency trying to dictate something that they, as citizens of the community, were in charge of. And so they felt that that should be a local decision by the voters of the incorporated city.
And so ODOT is dispenser, so that doesn't get the funding, but they're the dispenser. If they do get the funding, I think from the federal level, transit money comes to ODOT because it's an executive level branch, right? But they can't fund for money, they can't suggest, they can only do what the local people.
They can provide information.
That's all they can do.
That's all they can do.
And that's why we have the OTA.
Yeah, now I understand. Yeah, because I wasn't sure.
And the other thing that's unique about us, okay, we're a special district, but there's also transit agencies that are county departments, like Columbia County, that's a county department. There's service districts like Lincoln County, there's a Lincoln County Transportation is a service district, where they're like a special district, but they don't have a separate elected board. The county commissioners acts as their board. So that's a service district. And then there's some private,
Lots of private.
not lots.
In California, there are.
Yeah, not
Not here yet,
They're used
but
to.
big organizations that just come in and do it all. They just.
So
come in and do it all.
that makes a little bit of a challenge with different governances.
Yeah.
Like we have an elected board of seven commissioners, TriMet does as well. But some it's the county commissioner, some it's the city council.
Is TriMet a special district?
Yes.
Really?
a really big one.
Big time, big
Wow.
time.
You know, getting back to, and I know we have to, you know, this is a easy thing to ratify here, this change, but I just wanted to say that the long-term goal for us is to do a better job of PR and helping, we can be a part of helping people to understand governance, you know, and, you know, special districts. Maybe, and because we're not a big entity and we don't have a lot of staff, you know, it'd be hard to take on a big job like that to do PR. But we can always look for talent and in the community. And as we are talking with our community members, you know, we're asking for that kind of, that level of talent that, you know, people that want to tell a story, that want to get kids involved, that want to show that, you know, how that through K-12, you know, because that's how we bring people up to understand, you know, how the communities work, that we try to encourage that involvement. And, you know, it's just should be a part of our, all of our messaging and all of the stories that we tell. We make sure that, you know, we're inviting people to get involved.
And I think, you know, you all made the decision to join the district, you know, go back and look at why. How did you first become involved? You know, it's all about the network. We all have our networks, and that's how a lot of you got on here, because of your network. You know, I could go out and I could recruit board members. That's not my role. That's, as commissioners, that's your role. is
You'd
to-
rather not have the folks, you gonna pick, you'd rather have a diverse, you would have never gotten me had you used that as an example, because you weren't gonna find me. I mean, to be on the board. Say,
Yeah, I didn't know you,
I'm saying, exactly, so you don't really
but you
want,
were part of a network that was known, and that's how you got here.
but the fact that you didn't do it that way. Or
Yeah,
that looks different than, say you got your cousin, you got a cousin who's kind of good, get him, get your uncle.
sure,
So
sure.
if you're on the board, you'd rather not have that board, you'd rather have this board.
I mean, I'll take responsibility for this one here, because we got her on the Transportation Advisory Committee, and we loved working with her on that, and when we had a spot, it's like, yeah.
One thing I will say, and I know we can drop this, I worked in that office in the legislature. Legislatures, people think that they're all this sophistication thing. At the communication level, they're all basic. My job really was, you're getting letters in the mail. We're getting letters in the mail. All the emails, you get thousands a day. If you get any letters in the mail, because they look at citizens sit down and wrote a letter, and that person got attention. And it works not just politically, I'm gonna go in how it works in politically. It's the old letter to the editor, going letter to Aaron White, letter to Jeff Merkley's office. Somebody reads those.
Right.
So I think what we need to acquire or accumulate is groups of people who agree with us, that maybe we write the letter and they're willing to put their name on it and mail it in.
Right.
It happens in politics all the time.
Sure.
So some people may say, I want to do, but I don't write a good letter, or I don't know which one to say. But I assure you, in this whole era of, you can get emails on your phone, you watch everything. You're getting letters today.
Sure, a dime a dozen.
And someone sit there and wrote a hand letter, handwritten even more.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to come up with a system where we can actually, it's low cost. Write a letter to Representative Bonamici about something we find important. And you'd be surprised how much pay you get out of something like that.
And get that template out there.
Yeah, so many people who will put their name on the letter, who agree with us, what we're asking, but they read letters.
And this
It
is like a campaign, really,
is.
because, you know, this is not a one-off message.
No, it's a
Nobody needs to
continuous.
be attention to that, but like the third or fourth time, it's like, okay, these
Didn't you
people
write
are working something here.
Didn't you write about that last month? Never get that.
Yeah. I know we were really kind of down, we don't have a big, you know, staffing and everything, but, you know, it might be something to add to our priorities.
Okay.
So fleshing out that priority where we're telling our stories and,
On a more consistent basis.
yeah, in a way that we're working smart, not hard.
Right.
We don't need to wear ourselves out, and that's where planning comes in, is that you create a plan, so you make it so that we spread the duties and make it easy for all of us.
Something that's good is because Jason and Kathy are doing outreach now,
Exactly.
like what Kathy was saying, that she got to give all of these helmets. Next time that family sees Kathy at an event, hey, and so like if they, while they're doing their outreach, if they have some of those templates ready and it'd be like, like, do you want to help us out? Can you please fill this out? Like just sign it or read it and you can get it back to me or whatever. That way we can start, because once they see them face to face, they're more motivated than if we put like a call out there for support.
You know, I just thought, what if we could have had a little sticker that could have gone on to the.
Kathy's on the call, so she can hear everything you're saying.
It's the grassroots stuff. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's very effective. Especially in our community. In New York City, no one's gonna be paying you attention. It's just not. But in our community, small community, people pay attention. They see that stuff.
And they are listening. I mean, my little episode with the elderly Spanish gentleman, where we figured out how the transit app worked, and he was teaching me, I wasn't teaching him at all. So, it seems to be
Okay,
eventually it's getting to.
so we'll have this back before you at the next meeting, so you can adopt it. Thank you.
Is the next meeting here or in Astoria?
It'll be back in Astoria. Yeah. We found very challenging with having to have we don't have the big screen, we don't have a good camera on everybody. This is a little challenging. So.
You guys didn't go to the community center, Skylar didn't have that?
They had it at a very high cost.
Wow.
It's $15 an hour at Bob Chisholm.
That was staff on the weekend.
Oh, that's right. Then it's nothing, then you can't.
She said be about 4.
The
Yeah.
security room,
Forgot about that.
But this
I
worked
checked.
out fine.
And the other building, the Lake,
Mary Blake,
Mary Blake, sorry, Mary Blake building,
this fall.
and it's cold and it's just kind of not, this is much more relaxed atmosphere. Yeah, there's a lot of barriers in it,
I
so.
can provide hand warmers.
We got the exercise room, we go swimming across the wall.
So this wasn't,
This worked out good. All right, well, let's talk about the current priorities that were this was a 2019 we adopted,
yes, Mark.
but that was 2019, 2021. Didn't we do an update from that beyond that?
Well, I think when you got a grant, didn't you do an update or didn't you do a workshop on particularly for a grant? But anyway, but I don't have an updated.
Okay.
It's all yours.
These were, I passed this out just before we met here. What we came up with back in 2019, right when the pandemic was starting to ramp up, which obviously changed a lot of things that we did, but I think that we did some things during the pandemic that were outstanding. We go back and how we reacted right off the bat, and I said, let's hire a bunch of people and put them on the bus for the benefit. And that went over huge in the community and across the state. That people were really excited about that. We knew we were going to get funding, and so it's like, let's jump on it and get it done. And that was one of the best decisions I've made in my adult career, actually.
And state doesn't even now.
Yeah,
I think it did.
Yeah.
It's too easy having an outbreak.
and it showed that it not only showed the riding public that we cared, it showed the drivers. I mean, the drivers loved what we did. They loved that we jumped on that and did that because they needed the help on the bus to make sure people, were socially distant. They loved the fact that we put together barriers. Who'd have thought that we would want to separate our drivers from the riding public, but it was necessary. It's not ideal, but we've got a great maintenance staff and they were able to put something together right away that didn't cost a ton of money. And so that worked out well. So we did some things I think that were very wise at the time. We didn't go through a long process. Well, let's do a planning process on what we should do. No, we reacted and we jumped on it. And I will always stand by that.
I think the timing was impeccable. I mean, and like you said, you didn't have a planning session. It's just, we need to do this. We need to do it now.
Yeah. Because the other consideration too was the shutdown happened, all the service workers lost their jobs. You know, let's hire some people.
Yeah.
You know, let's get them by for a little while.
That's one of your skills, Jeff. You're good at pivoting and just moving forward.
It can be one of my good skills, but it can also be one of my downfalls too, if I don't do it right.
Sometimes you have to put the little bumper on, what is that called, a roadblock there for you.
Yeah,
Speed bump.
I'm all about getting over barriers. That's why, you know, planning this returning citizen program, that's what everybody was on board with. Let's break down the barriers.
Yeah.
Let's figure out what's gonna take to get this program off the ground and be successful. And that's what it was all about.
There's ideas, people, and ideas, people, solutions. You want ideas, people, solutions. Everybody's got ideas.
Well, you talk it all the time. You can talk and talk and talk. You don't have to act.
And I didn't have all the solutions. You know, I put together the right teams, and the teams that we got together from the Department of Corrections, DMV, and Public Transit, we had the A+ team, not just the A team. We had the A+ team because we were all on the same thing. We've only had 3 meetings, and we're going to launch this thing next month. So it's really remarkable.
Timing's right too.
Yes.
Less than a year, the whole thing.
Well, it ended up being a little more than a year, but this should have launched in January.
The public is finally ready for it. I mean, you know, the partners are ready, you know. 5-10 years ago, people wouldn't have understood.
Oh, no.
it.
No, not at all. And they would have gone, no way. I would have been one of those people. I can't do that. Yeah, you can do anything you want. So, there was 3 priority groups, priority 1 items, which that was the bulk of things. Priority 2, which there was a few things, and then there was 1 priority 3. And I just want to know if you guys have any comments on some of these. You know, we obviously didn't accomplish all of them. We've made some headway in a lot of them. And there's probably going to be some things that you'll want to carry over into the upcoming biennium. And that's really what we want to look at today, is which things should continue to be major focuses for us for the upcoming biennium. And the reason we're doing it now, we're going into the funding cycle right now. We're going to be writing our STIF plans, which that means our Transportation Advisory Committee has to gather, and we need to put before them what the board's priorities are, so they understand the direction that the district wants to go, and that they can make some decisions based on those priorities that you're going to establish. You know, obviously, the biggest challenge we have right now is just having enough drivers to provide the services that we were providing. You know, we were on a good trajectory of growth, you know, that month prior to the pandemic, even when we had to shut down everything. You know, that when we rolled out those expansion services, you know, that first month we were up 20 to 30% ridership, and then the pandemic hit and it all went down the toilet.
Are we far enough removed from the pandemic now that we can create expectations for ridership growth? Or are we still kind of not quite there?
No,
Some folks think next summer will be more indicative of things in the past.
I think we're there. I think we should plan for our ridership increases. You know, we just saw, you know, we've cycled that year, like I mentioned earlier today. So, you know, we had a 50% increase in September. I don't know what it is in October yet, but it will be an increase. But
The ship thing, we couldn't do the cruise ship thing.
yeah,
And
but that ties,
a better possibility for that.
that ties in with our shortage of drivers.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is, and that's still a challenge for us. We're still struggling with that, and I don't know when it's going to get better.
I think that, you know, I feel confident that we have skills to to meet these benchmarks. It's the external forces that are more challenging than our ability to do whatever. I mean, we're kind of hemmed in by what's happening, in terms of external, challenges.
Well, the labor market,
Yeah,
it's not just us, obviously, it's the whole economy. There's shortages everywhere, and so it used to be we were competing against, other transit agencies or other CDL related industries. No, we're up against McDonald's trying to hire people. You look at the fast food restaurants that aren't open anymore. They're open, but just drive through only.
and there's only so much innovation. I mean, I know that we're trying to innovate, but there's only so much we can do. Or is there more that you think we can do?
Well, outside of having driverless buses, no, that's being worked on now. I mean, they're scary. You out and ride one.
They're not gonna run.
Just retention or hiring and retention is not just in our industry, it's everywhere.
Yeah, but we've taken really important steps. You look at that new ATU contract that we have. And what we proposed, what they asked for a 7%. We proposed a 11 to 15% increase. That worked out well, but we're still not getting the applications.
Are we partners with county and local municipals in terms of going upstream? We all know that part of the problems with hiring and retention is affordable housing and communities that have childcare.
Yeah,
So,
that's.
We need to be a part of that
Yep.
conversation.
Yeah. Charles?
So if you wait in line and say, give me this many drivers and we can rock and roll. How many drivers?
As a
6, 8, 3, you could just wish, and a wish come true. If you could be fully staffed on drivers, what would that number?
to get us back to where we were, I need 7 new
At
drivers.
least 7 drivers.
Yeah. Problem is, we're hiring 1 or 2 at a time.
You got some attrition.
But, yeah, and we've got 2 that we just hired that are leaving. So it's just it's a vicious cycle, right?
So is there so it's the new ones that we're hiring that are leaving?
Yeah, our long-term drivers are not leaving.
Is there a common reason? Like, so one of my questions, I guess, because I've noticed that sometimes I'm called in to sign a last check and the person hasn't been there but for a short period of time. So the last one, I guess what I'm really trying to say, are we vetting these people enough? Like the last one that I signed, after they started working, then their drug test came back. Are we not waiting long enough? Like maybe the drug test should come back before we hire. Maybe
Sue and I had that conversation the day before yesterday.
Maybe we
Because that
need
was
to
a
be
concern of
doing
mine too.
more reference checks.
Yeah, and
Google, Facebook, before we start hiring, before we.
ad nauseum over the past few weeks, Sue and I have talked about this.
I'm sure your live body syndrome kicks in. We got a live one. Let's get them going.
Yeah, and that's been what she's been doing because she's under so much pressure to get people hired, but we're not doing our due diligence. So I put the brakes on that. We will not hire somebody until that background check and drug test come back. That
Because,
will not
I mean, it just wastes time. and
Everybody's
money.
time. Yep, yep. Now, that hasn't been the case with everybody. One person that we just hired just left because they have external health issues that when they're healthy, ready to come back to work, we'll hire them, but they've got to go through some stuff. So, but we'll deal with that.
Because I know that, the pressure, oh, they've got a CDL license, we're hiring them.
Right.
But
Doesn't
it
always
takes
work
a
out.
little bit longer just to.
What I'm doing myself is I could very easily say, nobody gets hired until I interview. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna micromanage. I've got to trust my staff. whether it's HR and the driver supervisors, they need to go through that process,
Mhm.
learn good hiring habits, and I've got to trust them to do that. Yeah.
Now, we do, employee satisfaction
We do exit interviews with
or
everybody.
survey, for current and existing employees, is that correct?
We haven't done existing for a while. We've just been doing exit interviews when we lose somebody.
You know, such a small group,
And
I don't know how honest people want to feel about it.
yeah, and the exit interviews, you know, when you read those, they're all positive. People enjoyed working here. But life has changed for them. We had one of our great employees, who worked for us for quite a while. They moved to Wisconsin because her husband had a great opportunity back there, and they're doing wonderfully. But she loved working there, you know, and so we see good positive comments. We don't rarely see negative ones.
Hmm.
Rarely see them with comment about what you do. So we've tried very hard to build that culture. And we've been successful at that. You know, Mary can attest to what it used to be like here. It was hell. It was absolutely hell working here. So, but we finished that.
Crazy.
Yeah. And what?
Yeah, or delayed.
Report here, you can.
I kind of retired. I think.
Like, I love what you're developing with the returning citizens program, because that's gonna benefit so many agencies and districts. But in like us getting benefit from it is gonna be difficult because of the whole housing situation. Like if somebody gets interested and they wanna come here, it's hard to get established in our area and the entire North Coast, really. I don't know about the South Coast, but the North Coast. So that's a barrier
Mhm.
because hiring someone that already lives here would be ideal. But I also think that there is a barrier because I've met people that they're looking for jobs and they would be interested. But because cannabis is legal in Oregon, but not federally.
Yep.
And there's people that I know, they're good drivers, they're good people, they would never be smoking on the job. However, it stays in your bloodstream. So they say like, yeah, I will not pass that test, even though I go home and smoke at night. Like I would be a good worker, but if that's a requirement, I can't even apply. And that's a barrier. And they understand, it's like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, federal money, like, sure. And there's people that we could hire locally, and that requirement just,
Yeah, we're stuck there with
yeah,
that one.
we're stuck.
Now, one thing I'll toss out, you mentioned housing, and that's, you know, obviously like childcare, it's a huge issue here. And sometimes you got to think out of the box. You know, we're looking at some point, hopefully sooner than later, to build a new facility, new operations facility. And this would be a heavy lift, but I think it's worth looking at and worth advocating for is what if, when we build a new facility, we have some housing on there.
It'd be great.
I know.
Land use laws aren't gonna allow it right, so we gotta figure a way that we could, you know, lobby for something like that to get exclusion or an exception to that rule. Because, you know, it's not just the coast, it's the entire state of Oregon that you can't afford a house anymore. People can't afford to
But
move.
we are looking at relaxing land use laws now, and the conversation is going on right now
Yeah,
in our county.
I think also, Jeff, and I don't want to get off here. I think that you have what's called temporary housing, meaning that if people are there for 90 days or whatever. I think it's a different law, but if you have permanent housing, I think then that's a different, I think you're gonna get a different block on that because there's folks down in Cannon Beach who built a fourplex coaster. They built a fourplex for new employees who want to live down there. But I'm not sure how they got away with it, but they did it. And I was wondering, there's other locations have
Yeah.
bought housing.
right.
Yeah.
It's technically not permanent, it's not, you don't sign a 2-year lease, for example, but it's about getting them a foot in so they can then determine, because you can't figure out where you want to live, you just show up, because we showed up and it's hard to We just show
Yeah.
up somewhere, I gotta work, where do they have a house to live?
Yeah, because what I envision, because the property that, we potentially could go to is gonna be zoned as industrial, and getting housing on industrial land is a challenge. But my dream, I'd love to have 6 apartments on our property for 6 of our drivers.
And wouldn't that be great, because it gives them 6 months to, keep searching for
Yeah.
other housing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, it
How
gives them a place to
That's,
live.
I think that the county commissioners need to hear, the planning commission needs to hear that.
How about childcare? And could we, if we build that in an industrial area in childcare? would
Well, that was
also
kind of
be-
the beginning, the end for Sunset Empire.
Yeah.
There, it really was. There was gonna be a transit center built down here.
The market.
Seaside. And it was gonna be a combination, transit center and daycare center. And it's where the old grocery store is now Napa.
Or, I mean,
It's now Napa.
oh, yeah. Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a grocery store, and it was gonna be retail, a little bit of retail in it too.
And that's when the downfall of the district happened, the financial collapse.
Got in big trouble.
Yeah.
Well, and also look at the middle school property. Hasn't there been some talk about having, a presence there, transportation district, could be a hub, a transportation hub. It already now, the ESD already moved there, it really is in a good
Yeah, but
position.
when we did go down, I did a walk, I went through a walkthrough with Skylar, and I wasn't comfortable with the space at that point. And they've since leased that space out, which is fine, but there was gonna be some challenges with it, so.
There's a group of people in this community that really want, and throughout the county that want to have partnerships with childcare. That it has to be subsidized at some point, and municipals have to partner up, because it's just not working as a private industry.
No, and it's
It is
not.
not.
I know Dan Gaffney's been working on that. They've got, I think they're sitting on $250,000 that they can put out there for grants to help those providers. And so that's, they're biting off little pieces at a time, unfortunately.
But we still need to go back and revisit because we need to do it on a bigger scale.
And,
Oh, yeah.
and what Cindy was doing that got in trouble was she'd already started the ball rolling and getting, estimates for building it and things like that before she had the money to pay them. So the idea, it was really bad. So it took us 10 years to pay it back, pretty much. But the idea was good.
Rather than the concept itself.
Good
Was,
concept.
doubtful.
No,
It was just part of it.
Not doubtful,
Yeah,
excuse me.
it was part of it. It was part of it. Because she was spending money.
Mismanagement of funds, is what she
She was
was.
spending money.
Okay,
This
you
is-
said,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
but it's not because the idea, the project
No,
was
no.
faulty.
Okay,
Seaside was all in.
Good
I mean,
support for
all
you.
in. Yeah, no.
Just
Because they had several ideas of where to put it. Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but one was where the library used to be, and I don't know if you remember where the old library was.
The
next-
surf shop.
Yeah, that was another one. So
Yeah.
they had several good ideas, good ones, but again, she didn't wait until she had the money secured. She went ahead and contract with people and started the ball rolling before. And so that's what
But
happened.
the idea of childcare adjacent to transportation is totally cool.
Oh, yeah.
Park and ride, I went to work in Portland with, Max Line and or TriMet. And, they still haven't figured that out yet. I mean, that's so convenient for families.
Yeah,
And when my wife and other associates that Park and Rec people went out on their own, and Mary could still support it as the director, but we had to reach out into the private sector, and it's just not functionally gonna happen. It just cannot be a private thing without a subsidy,
Right.
so
A large subsidy.
a large.
But, you gotta get the business sector on board.
Well, they do want to be on board because they're hurting for employees. And that's one of
Yeah,
the
but the wheel's
housing and
not there
childcare,
yet.
the two biggest things.
Yeah, well, it's deceivingly simple. It's not an easy fix.
But if you, it seems one thing that's lacking is centralized entity to coordinate all this. I mean, they will have the problem, but we'll have countless meetings, and some of them will be meaningless because there's so many. But if you had a central, which you don't have, a central organization, or to create an entity where you can all talk to this one entity, submit ideas and get things rolling. And you can do it as a nonprofit, get that rolling, and the earlier the better. So you can have obviously the nonprofit status. And you can just compile a lot of things in one entity. And because you're all just talking to each other without a solution. And you have to have a central point, in my opinion.
Community
How
development.
organized that is. And
Not single handed.
Is there such a thing as community development?
I think Tracy wants to talk.
Okay.
How's that?
So I just wanted to review a couple of the first priority items to see if those still would be in the, so do you feel, Jeff, that these things are still a priority? Does benchmark services still be a priority?
I think benchmarking services, I think that's just a continual thing that maybe doesn't need to be a priority because we've done a lot of things to put things in motion to where now we're tracking those things. Like we talk about on-time performance, we track that amongst our peers. So that's just become a normal thing that we do. Obviously, ridership increases. I'm not going to use the word decreases because I don't think we'll see that anymore. We passed that hump, so we're always going to track ridership. That's just another normal thing that we would do. Fleet reliability, we've improved on immensely just because of the staff we now have in maintenance. It's not as big of a concern as it used to be. Employee retention, that's going to be a problem, a continual problem, I think. And again, like we talked about a little bit ago, it's not our long-term employees. They're happy with us. They're sticking around. It's making sure that we're hiring the right people to keep them here. So that one still needs to be, in my mind, on there.
The first three, we've pretty much made.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if I were to, I would want the employee recruitment and retention to be a whole separate category. You know, because back in 2019, we weren't struggling with this as much like we are for this past year and a half.
And I agree with you. I think that's until we can move.
And I think it needs to be number one.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Because until we can really get our employees back up to where we would like to have them, we're not going to be able to grow.
Right. Yeah, everything else is just waiting for that.
I've often wondered this. So the job that, in eyeball test, the job looks like a cool job. Looks like you drive around, picking people up, drive around. It looks cool and easy to me. But I'm not a driver, right?
Exactly.
So I guess my question is, do the drivers, before we hire them, have a full understanding of what the job is? Are they like me? They think if it looks cool, I'll drive around the bus picking people up. Do they have a full idea of what the full scope of the job is?
We've gotten a lot better at that. You know, there's a job description for everything, but there's only so much you can put on a piece of
Right.
paper. That's why on all the interviews, when Sue interviews drivers, she has a driver supervisor who's also been a driver.
Okay,
So they can really explain what the job is and share what it is, and they can answer questions.
looks like a cool job if you just from the eyeball outside looking in.
There's a lot more to it than you
See,
and I would
I've
ever
seen
think.
the 20 drivers, that poor guy gets to drive between Seaside and Cannon Beach all day. I'm bad at that. The first thing is, I didn't even think about that.
Timetable you have to keep, I can see where it would, I think it would be fun. personally.
Oh,
But
so
I
do
think
I.
it's also gonna be really stressful.
And maybe they're like you and me, they get fun and they realize, oh, this is.
It's work, and once in a while you get one of those passengers that aren't really nice.
Mhm.
But I think the barriers, and not just for COVID, but just the way society is moving, that's a safety.
Yeah.
And I'm almost thinking we should be carrying that through
Oh, no, that's gonna continue.
because,
That won't go away.
not just because of the COVID, but because of the way
And there's,
certain people are behaving.
you look at,
Absolutely.
you know, some large urban systems and some very crime ridden towns. I mean, they're bulletproof glass, they're in a cockpit, surrounded by bulletproof glass. You know, I never want to be that bad. I would hope we never.
I would hope we would never, I would hope we wouldn't have to even talk about
Right.
doing this, but. And I don't think
We're in a
we're
different
there
world.
here.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that.
But that's something that's always in the back of our minds.
And I want to compliment Lisa, who was coaching and had the new bus driver and
Lisa.
she, no, it wasn't. One of the driver supervisors was coaching the new employee as I was riding, as I was entering the bus. She went through a whole bunch of projects of what the scenario is and how close to be parked on the situation and to read the passengers.
Yeah, that wasn't actually a driver supervisor, that was a mentor.
Mentor.
Yeah, we matched new employees up with, new drivers up with an existing driver.
Perfect.
To keep them all.
It worked really well,
Yeah.
really. The new employee, I said I would feel comfortable learning as I was going.
Yeah.
And it was really good.
Yeah.
I appreciated it.
One of the things, we talked about the drivers don't, what they're getting into, was on a bus in Seattle. And we stopped in the middle of the road to Seattle, up, and after, and he wasn't moving, nobody's getting on, nobody's getting off. Finally, we went up, why are you stopped here? I'm waiting for the snow to melt. And by God, that's what he did. And we got off, like, we can't say, by the way, the bus was waiting for the snow to melt. And so I'm wondering, especially around here, there's not that much snow, but when there is, especially like in Astoria.
Right,
So anyway, that's just something to throw out. When you stop in the middle of the road.
wait, never heard that one before.
And it's true. Most other things like you said, that is true.
No, they juggle a lot of things, and, you know, you think about when we grew up and we went through driver's ed, you know, it was all about defensive driving. Well, bus drivers are the ultimate in watching out for being defensive drivers, because there's a lot of people that are not very good on the road. And they're constantly having to watch that, constantly. Plus take care of the two dogs that may be fighting in the back, plus there's just all sorts of things.
You know, the one last thing about, brought up about riders' behavior. I noticed that there are, at Providence Hospital, there's posters that this was new since the pandemic, you know, that said kind of about, you know, conduct, how to conduct yourself, you know, that, it was unprecedented. I'd never seen something of that nature where you're kind of being reminded of how using your best behavior. And I don't know, maybe there's, you know, kind of a lighthearted, you know, little reminder way to post that in the buses.
Yeah, and
I've seen more.
And
and
you're
more
talking
of that.
about for the riders?
Yeah.
For the riders,
Yeah,
not the
for
drivers, yeah, yeah.
I saw one of those signs, can't remember where it was, but, you know, our employees showed up to work today, be nice to them.
yeah.
Yeah,
And those are the kind of things that are important to do to help support our drivers too. We don't, I mean, we do have issues with certain people. We're never going to get away from that. We have challenging people that we deal with, but our drivers are really professional, and they, for the most part, know how to handle those people, especially our long-term drivers. They're really good at that.
Saying, maybe posting it would make a negative, more of a negative impact than a positive.
Yeah, and You know, we had to, back in 2017, we did an ordinance, you know, to address rider behavior because it was getting out of control. It was out of control.
So now you have a system of.
And so we can exclude people now.
Mhm.
We haven't excluded.
It changed
anybody.
things.
We haven't, yeah, we haven't excluded anybody for a
So was
long
it
time.
word of mouth? People kind of got the word that there would be
Yeah, that-
consequences.
they got excluded, you know, some people got excluded and would get excluded for 90 days.
Cut it out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any pushback, you know, to our
That's
staff.
good. That's
so
good.
it's, yeah, things are, we're, I think, pretty good right now out on the buses.
I think when I go out in the shelters and talk to our riders, and I always, wherever I see them, is there anything I can help you with? Do you have any questions? Can I get you a, you know, because I always have extra schedules in my car at all times.
You have an office in your car.
I know, but I have to have everything in there because I never know, you know, and I definitely run out. Because I mean, like, you have 25 shelters, so when you times that by 4 or 5 things I'm posting, it's a lot. And then we go through, I put stickies on them, which aren't taped, so they don't come off. Unless I want to risk it, and sometimes I do risk it with some things with tape on, but anyway, once in a
He
while.
knows I hate it.
I know, but if I run out of stickies, sometimes I'll use tape, because I'm in Cannon Beach and I don't want to go back and
Say so.
and they don't sell them anywhere in Cannon Beach, no stickies. No. Believe me, I know. But anyway, the people that I talk to love us. I mean, they love us. They love the bus. They love the drivers. They know the drivers' names. They you know.
And conversely, our drivers know their.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm always so impressed when I go out there.
It's our reputation is wonderful. I mean, it's very, very few people that just find us disgusting. Very few. And it's usually because there's been an incident where there might have been a difference of opinion and they didn't feel like they got something resolved. But our staff tries so hard to resolve it, so hard to give second chances. I mean, I've called and, you know, because I receive phone calls because I'm kind of third on the list. It goes to Transit Center, then it goes to Seaside, then it comes to me. So, and especially on the weekend, I always answer the calls. I don't say, if I hear it and it rings, I answer it because they're not going to be calling me unless there's something going on and maybe I can resolve it. But even on the weekend, I've called Paul and said, guy missed the bus down in Cannon Beach, this is the situation. I don't know 100%, but he's got to be to work on time. And he says we came early. Paul takes it, calls the driver supervisor, sends the van down, picks him up, gets him to work on time.
That's great.
That's what we do.
I think that's the beauty of
Isn't that beautiful?
what we do. You know what, it kind of way makes up for, I'm gonna tell you this one little thing about how I feel about riding the bus, because I was a total bus junkie for years, rode from Sherwood to Portland State University. Years, and I loved it and knew the drivers. But the buses here aren't very cushy.
Are they bad?
Cushy.
Cushy?
That's the one
Yeah.
thing that you have to say. I love it that, you know, they're smaller, that, you know, you can actually talk to, you know, people and you know, it's a great experience. You know, several that I've ridden on, it was just like, it almost sounded
They're
like
like
they're
the
about to
seats.
fall apart.
Good. Good.
Isn't that terrible?
Wow.
I had to say it.
Well, that's fine, you know, and we were like that.
People that is not a concern of theirs at all.
We recognized that a few years ago, and one of the things that we implemented was a new suspension system called liquid springs compared to, you know, the old shock and whatever absorbers. And the liquid springs, I mean, it increased the comfort of the ride immensely, and that's what we buy now.
It's just, you know, and this was perfect world department, you know, if we got all the money in the world, wouldn't it be great to have, you know, a cushy,
Oh, yeah.
kind of nicer.
Wouldn't it be great to order buses and actually get them within 6 months instead of 6 or 7 years?
Maybe my list, I'm down farther up the list.
Oh, I forgot to finish the other thing.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
There were 2 priorities that I want to move. In the priority 2 section from our discussion today, I really feel that it is time for us to move out and start trying to find a facility, a place to build a facility. And get us out of that.
And just so you know, I am working with the developer on that. I don't have anything concrete yet enough to bring before the board, but there is movement on that.
So do you want to move that to number one?
I want to move
Okay.
priority one on that. I want to move
Okay.
it from 2 to 1.
All right.
And the third priority, which is, which we also just talked about, since we have this really good rider facility, maybe we should talk about doing right hourly and volunteer programs, maybe build those, put that in priority 2,
Which one?
Very last one.
the third one.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And put that in the what, in the
put
second,
it in the second.
Yeah.
priority.
You know, and that would make sense because once we build a new facility, you know, we're gonna be incorporating a training center in there.
Correct.
And evaluation center for people that have mobility challenges. So we'll be able to evaluate them better. We're gonna have a cutout bus and those kind of things,
yeah.
and we can incorporate that right down program.
So anyway, that's just my suggestion.
I like that.
Okay.
So with increasing volunteerism, you know, they don't grow on trees. And
It's hard.
from what I've learned, and that's gonna take concerted effort if we want to increase that.
Yeah, well, look how long it took for us to get our second vet driver. You know, thanks to you. You influence over that. Yeah, but that's what it's gonna.
And have marketed that or asked about that. I mean, really good program of trying to recruit all the legions, all the, you know, the elks, that just everywhere.
You know, what are the kinds of, how does, maybe we need some more help with volunteering, you know, with like the act of recruiting volunteers.
Yeah, well, number one, you have to set up a program.
Program, that's right.
You have to have a
Yeah.
very viable program that people want to
Yeah.
be a part of.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just say, we need volunteers.
Yeah, right.
Well, that doesn't mean dinner. Because I really don't want a bunch of volunteers, because that takes a staff person to manage all those volunteers, so we have to be cognizant of that as well. However, if we can develop a program that makes a lot of sense, that benefits us, it benefits our riders, then by all means, we need to do it.
When, in the past, we offered, our volunteer program offered the volunteers free passes. And that was a big, I mean, that was a good thing because they were avid riders and then it helped with their budget. And then they became, yeah.
But, you know, maybe just, you know, we need more feedback as to what are the incentives.
Right.
Not for just us trying to conjure up what are the incentives, but what is, you know, asking potential.
You know,
folks, you know.
in my mind, no,
It's mainly just people giving of their time, you
Yeah.
know.
But what do we need volunteers for?
that's the thing.
That is.
Determine what kind of program, do we want them to be volunteers, do we want them to be ambassadors? We call them ambassadors.
Or buddies, or riding buddies, which was a program we
Yeah.
had before. They rode with somebody.
Kind of like, you know, our paratransit division, a lot of our riders have to have a personal care attendant with them. Somebody who rides with them to help them navigate, you know, where they need to go for their appointments and stuff. Those type of things. I can see you for that. Yeah, because if we could get more people as a volunteer, almost acting as a personal care attendant, and get more people out of paratransit on the fifth route, that benefits us.
Yeah.
Because right now, we subsidize a paratransit ride, and don't quote me on this, I just got the results from 2021. It's between $60 and $80, $60 and $80 to give somebody a ride. Whereas,
Per trip.
yeah, we're on fixed route,
For
it's
$2.
maybe 10, 15 bucks. So, those are always things that I think about, because it's a lot of money.
And it was a mobility program before. It was in mobility when I was before, and being developed in that realm to do exactly that. To reduce our costs by having volunteers, right? Anyway, but we've come a long way from where we were, and now we're building back up again with mobility, having someone that really is mobility and somebody that's really doing field, and really doing it. I mean, we've gone through several
Yeah, between
employees
Kathy and Jason, I mean,
with
we've
doing
got the
it.
18.
Yeah, and before that, we,
There were two programs that I pulled my hair out because I wasn't seeing any return on. We had two well-paid people that there was just nothing going on. And they were collecting a paycheck and they drove me crazy.
let's say 3 and maybe 4 people. So,
Well,
yeah,
But,
going back before you.
yeah, but we always had two people.
Yeah.
One in transportation options and one in mobility, and now we have the right people.
Yeah, we really, really do. And they're saying that really, they are starting and started from ground zero.
Mhm.
They have started the mobility and the transportation options program from the bottom, and they're doing a great job and building a great foundation, and it's just wonderful. But it
Yeah.
just takes time to,
And you look at going back to the pandemic, you know, when the pandemic hit and we shut everything down, we had to completely change mobility management, and Jason had a great idea, you know, and that's why we invested a lot of money in all that camera equipment.
Oh,
started
yeah.
doing Training videos,
Wonderful.
professional training things. I mean, he's so well thought of throughout the state now. There's other agencies that want to borrow him to help with their stuff.
So how many more volunteers do we need between Kathy and that Kathy and Jason are trying to generate?
What's that?
How many more volunteers would be good?
And I don't, that's
Yeah.
not
Mo-
known.
mobility would be before Kathy, I would think. That's from my experience here, the transportation options and what it is and how it would be Jason that we could use the volunteers. Because I think he gets his kids to volunteer.
Yeah, yeah. They get voluntold.
At least 2 or 3. I mean, that he could use it for 2 probably.
But again,
But
we need to work with them and figure that out.
yeah,
So we
program.
have a program in place rather than just, hey, let's go.
No,
do
I
volunteers now. Let's have something.
But I could see- I probably shouldn't, have done, but this is stuff that I had a clerk on for a long time, so I could see Jason making a video about driving. And for new hires that they see, that they kind of look at too, that explains and shows what it's like, you know, I mean, he could, he'd be really good at that. And it's something that the HR could show or say, you can look at it, and put it on the, yeah.
We talked about the volunteer program, bumping that up from a priority 3 to number 2.
3 to 2.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Perfect.
So we are setting priorities for what's the period, 2022 to 2024?
20, the biennium of 23 to 25, so it starts on July 1st of 2023.
July
Ends,
1st.
and June 30th of 2025.
Go 3 years.
It's a 2-year.
Well, I'm saying we're planning it out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So then, I see on priority 1, second item, develop an STD specific emergency plan. I've seen this one for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure like what it is that, why haven't we moved more? Like, is it really not a priority one that we haven't done much about it? Or are there things that are listed in here that have already been done or taken care of that maybe we should take out?
Yeah, I would keep the whole thing because we haven't done it as a whole comprehensive plan yet.
So why if
Yeah,
it's
that's
on
fine.
priority 1, we haven't done?
We haven't done it yet,
Right.
time-wise.
Is it time or is it that staff, like who would take care of this? Is
Well,
it something that maybe would be added to our staff's
It was something that
priority?
I
or
was
do we
gonna,
need to
I
hire?
was gonna take it on myself. I haven't had the time to take it on myself. I had been at one point wanted to have the safety committee take it on as a project.
Mhm.
That never fleshed out.
Because it's a lot.
It is. a
So I'm
lot.
wondering if
It
maybe
needs to
it
be
would
pared
be
down, keep it down a little bit.
either tweak down a little bit or maybe have a person that would kind of take this on more hands-on, because it's a lot.
So this also has taken place during the pandemic, and I'm assuming that had some
Yeah,
to do with quiet,
somewhat,
so.
somewhat.
It would, perhaps the pandemic could be a starting point in that it's recent and write down, well, people still remember what you did, what the issues were as a basis to start.
No,
You don't have to finish it.
And that's a good point, because if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the first actions that the board took was adopting the virus plan.
Oh, yeah.
Not the virus, it was,
The COVID.
No.
what was it called? I have to go back and pull it, but we set a policy, we put a policy in place. And that, you're absolutely right, that could be a foundation for it.
And to do it now,
Right,
even if you have, just ask everybody who's involved, can you write down the things you did
right.
during the pandemic, what worked, what didn't work, and what you need?
A lot of that would be transferable, right?
Yeah.
We'll have something else. You know, it's the nature of things that.
It could be a template for whatever, and there's not one policy that we put in place that became that template.
Actually, because we already tested it locally. So
Right.
it's not something that's, from somewhere else that we have to tweak. There are things that, yeah, definitely worked well. And
So
so
we
that
made it our
so-
own, our own. plan.
Yeah, so I don't know if maybe it would be good to look into opportunities of maybe doing an internship or asking the community college, like students that could help develop these kinds of things, or maybe partner with emergency preparedness. Like, it's a lot, and I think that internally to tackle it, it's a full-time job. And I'm positive you can't really take on this because there's so much going on already. Or maybe with tongue points, like, I don't know if maybe there's students that can get some of that, those credits by helping developing something like this.
Those are great.
I will say also, Jeff, my grandson was there. He had an Oregon State would help us on this. Some of the colleges will, although they're not here necessarily, but they're doing a lot of legwork already, right?
The extension service.
Reach out to the colleges, not just classroom community colleges, because they may or may not have what we're looking for, but I guarantee Oregon State or U of O does, and
We
So
know
they-
what extension.
yeah, they're looking at ways to get those people out in internships and doing this sort of work, so they got another place to go.
And this might be a little bit odd, but the seniors always have a project that they need
So
to do.
specific for a project.
Specific of course.
If one of these items, if one student took one of these items on. From the high school.
Those are great.
I love the idea of engaging our community college.
High school seniors, program, enough to.
Plays right into what you're talking about, getting youth involved with what we are.
Great stuff. But you have a lot of experience. We need to try to get you some help.
And could I ask, so just going down the bullet points, I thought you had some parts of the succession plan are done, are they not?
Well, they are, because Jennifer was our
Yeah.
real first one. Because Jennifer got, worked with Paul for a year. We created a deputy COO position,
Mhm.
put her in to work with Paul for a year, knowing he was gonna be retiring. And then she was able to easily step into that, into that role. That's the only position we've done it with, outside of driver supervisors. We're always looking for opportunities to train drivers that want to move up as driver supervisors. And the first step for that is them becoming PIC, persons in charge. So when a driver supervisor is like on vacation or is out for a day, we designate a PIC that's already out on the route that can answer the questions that come up. The point of contact for the other drivers.
Got a question, then, you can never quit, you can never leave. But just in case.
I will be. We're gonna talk about that.
You're,
I just kidding.
you know what Jennifer would be, who's you? Who's in line for you? And we hope this never happens, we won't ever need it, but just.
No, and we need to be thinking about that, and I don't know, we've got a couple of.
Might have been accidents, so I have to be leaving something. I hope you live to be forever.
Jeff's a vampire.
Yeah.
Who would be you right now? There's no one in the house.
No, there could be a couple of people, but they need to be developed more.
That's good. We'd have to-
I totally see that as a natural for Jennifer,
Okay.
you know, as she continues her career growth. I think that would be the next step, but she needs, you know, she needs a couple of years in her seat now.
Does she understand that's kind of her direction, or she doesn't see?
She knows that.
She does, okay.
Yeah, that's part of the conversations we've been having all
Okay,
along, so.
I thought we had created that position, deputy, whatever it is, that if there was some, if you were gone for whatever reasons, that position would be.
We had created the deputy COO for the express reason to promote her to that position, knowing that she would be taking over for Paul when Paul retired.
Right, I
You
understand.
know, so it's not still, we don't have a vacancy per se in that position. Because Jennifer can't be training another person while she's learning her own job.
No, that's not quite what I said. There wasn't a deputy chairperson, what is the official title?
Vice chair?
Vice chair, when I started. So then that was created because if you're gone for whatever reason, and I don't mean the literal sense, that who would be in charge because it hadn't been designated.
We had, board policies were made for that.
That's
Yeah, there is a board policy in place for if I'm not here.
right,
And I don't remember all the details, but
right. Okay.
it gives the board chair some responsibility, not a ton.
No,
But it codified it because prior to having that board policy, it was the wild, wild west.
Right, there was nobody.
Yeah.
No position. No,
And I'm calling Paul.
yes.
I'm calling Paul.
You know, know, what that. Chain of command and all that, you know, like, I remember a few months ago when somebody called from the chamber or the visitor center in Cannon Beach, and somebody left their wallet on the
Right.
desk.
yeah,
That whole thing. right?
And, you know, honestly, I wish I had them, all that information, like what's the proper protocol?
yeah.
And it was off hours, it's on a weekend, and, you know, and I just went online to our website and got lucky kind of noodling it out, and I found a name, but it wasn't very intuitive.
Yeah.
And so I would love to be armed with that information. to
And I'll have
know
that,
exactly
I'll have that for you in December. meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, looks like a,
That's a good idea.
like if this happens,
Because normally,
this happens, you do that kind of thing.
normally it's call me. Well, you tried that. And,
Yeah,
and I remember I was somewhere.
Out of town.
yeah.
Yeah,
But the name I got on the website was that, I did call that person and he says, oh, I'm off duty now, I'm at Costco shopping, but call this guy. And that was the guy that was on duty. So it was kind of luck of the draw that I was able to get hold of that.
Right.
But Donna had told me that she has a manual that if she's ever gone of what to do, and I was wondering whether that could be developed for each position so that if there's a vacancy or absenteeism for a long period of time, that person would know what to do.
Yeah.
It's so
In some
difficult.
positions, that's necessary to have.
So what I'm saying specifically is to develop manuals for each position. Under this,
Operational manuals.
right, for,
And Jeff, can I ask another, so down in the develop man management, we seem to have really good success with paratransit and first and last has kind of been okay. We've kind of failed with dial-a-ride.
So dial-a-ride to me is completely dead. Because we got it down to, you know, it used to be Warrenton Hammond was part of it, but then we expanded service in Warrenton Hammond, so it's not out there anymore. It's really just out in Shepherd Garden and Napa Svensson. But we're lucky if we get one call a month. which is fine in my mind because dial-a-ride is very expensive.
It is.
And one of the things I'll be sharing next month is we just got the latest NTD report, National Transit Database report. And whenever I get those, the first thing I do is I print up ours, and then I also print up Tillamook's because I like to compare. I always like to compare with our peers. Tillamook has a different system. They have a very robust dial-a-ride system. And when you see the numbers involved with running the dial-a-ride system, you'll never want to utter those words again. Because it's really expensive. But the one thing that we're looking at again is the microtransit. You know, what Jennifer did is her project going through the ELA. But again, we haven't firmly decided that we want to do that because we haven't seen a cost involved with it yet. And that's what I have to worry about. You know, when you look at a dial-a-ride and paratransit costing $60 or $80 a ride, yeah, we can't afford that. But is there a way we can set it up to where it is affordable and it makes sense? And I believe that there will be a good model out there for us.
Currently, who are the drivers for dial-a-ride?
The paratransit folks.
And how many paratransit drivers do we have?
One, two, Delicio, Braun, Susie,
You want,
5. I think there's 5.
I think it's
And
fine.
those 5 drivers don't drive our fixed routes, buses ever, like.
We do have one person who drives both. I think Whitehair drives both. But the other ones just drive. They just drive the paratransit, except when cruise ships are in, and we have enough drivers.
Got it.
Then they're also driving cruise ship buses too.
What about expanding the role of microtransit? In terms of such as when you have routes that aren't particularly filled with the buses to use a microtransit to use less fuel. And it seems like maybe you could get, I don't understand. You said you and Mary could drive microtransit.
I say that tongue in cheek. I mean, we could, if we had to jump into a van and drive one, we could, because it doesn't require a CDL. The district does require a CDL for all the drivers. And I don't know that that would.
And perhaps you may get more drivers. Because it's easier to drive a microtransit than to get the. This is just off the top of my head. I really like to see microtransit. I want to give you the prejudice right there. And you can also, this is also in the future, to go up and down that commercial or up and down, Major Street and Seaside. And so to expand your availability and yet not have such a tremendous expense.
And that's what the trick is, finding that balance.
Okay,
So that's why I'm looking at models across the nation.
so with that segue, like I would like to explore microtransit.
No, and I think it should be. I think that should be up in priority number 1. It should be a top priority one because we've been talking about it. No, I agree 100%.
So,
So the only thing that I would change about that, then would we eliminate dial-a-ride and put in microtransit in its place?
But when,
Could convert demand response
Correct,
to microtransit.
microtransit.
do we have a requirement to have dial-a-ride or not?
No,
No.
that's a totally optional.
That's nice.
Paratransit's the only non-optional one. We're required to provide.
Phase itself,
Pardon?
phasing itself out.
It has.
If you watch it.
Yeah.
But are you putting microtransit in demand management? What did you say?
were you putting micro, yeah, I don't know either.
Demand response. Microtransit would take the place of demand response.
But that's not exactly the same.
It's totally the same.
No, I was thinking that, or maybe I misunderstand.
It's fine.
And this isn't semantics at all, that to actually have a schedule for microtransit.
No, that's not how microtransit works.
On call.
That's a bus route. If you have a scheduled service, that's a bus route, a fixed bus route. Microtransit is an on-demand, it's the easiest way to describe it, it's public Uber.
Oh, really? So.
Yeah. The person would call for a ride or they'd have an app. They'd put it on their phone to request a ride. And we would be there within a certain frame of time, like 20 to 30 minutes.
So you wouldn't use it, say, to increase night service or service that's not a fly.
You could.
But
Microtransit is, it could be anything you want to build it to, but it's what does it cost?
no, I guess I thought you could use small, say vans
Yes, no, you can use cars,
as a bus schedule.
not as a bus schedule.
Why not?
It's just as during a certain time of the day, like you could have microtransit available. It could be even like during peak hours, peak commute hours, or it could be
People got off
late
work.
at night. It could
5
be for
o'clock.
service workers, at 11 o'clock, you could have a microtransit system set up.
So would you go all the time at 5 o'clock?
Just a phone.
If we had an unlimited supply of money, yeah. But that's what we've got to figure out is what makes the most sense for it. What I envision ours looking like is that we would keep our Route 101 between Astoria and Seaside and actually extend that down to Cannon Beach on Monday through Sunday, and then have microtransit within the communities. We'd have microtransit available in Astoria. So if they had a ride they needed to take in Astoria from their house to a doctor's appointment in Astoria, yeah, I could take them directly there. Otherwise, if they were wanting to go to Warrenton to go shopping, they would get taken to the transit center. They could jump on the 101 bus to go over to Warrenton. And then the same thing with Warrenton. They would get fed to whatever major stop we designated, whether it's Fred Meyer's or Ensign Lane. That's where the microtransit vehicle would take them, so they could go down to Seaside or up to Astoria. So they become feeders for that main line,
Okay.
that main
So
artery.
I would be fire if you want. First bullet.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And by being on demand, that's how you keep the cost down. Because you don't have a driver continuously, even if they don't have any riders or just one rider, no, they just go on demand. and do that. Yeah, it's a cool.
It's actually transit districts back east that I know of have implemented this and they love it.
Yeah,
Because it gives them the flexibility out their trunk lines
Mhm.
to go to, so the hospital's not on, we're in that one town, the hospital's not on the trunk line here. So, but it's within maybe a quarter mile of the main route. So they have these microtransit buses that take people from the trunk line there and other places, but so they love it and it's quite popular.
Would microtransit enter under Northwest Transportation Options?
no, it would just be part of a supplement to our fixed route service. And the timing is interesting too, because one of the other things that I'm starting to get heartache about this past week is learning that the nation as a whole, and I don't know what the area, the region is up here in the Northwest, but we're only sitting on a 30-day supply of diesel fuel, which could be extraordinarily problematic for us. Number one, I have a diesel pickup, but number two, half of our buses are diesel vehicles, and if there becomes a shortage, that's going to be an issue for us. So.
Or maybe emergency plans.
So it's just something
to
to think about, that's one thing that I'm looking at right now.
So that.
What's going to happen?
So have the transit agencies gotten exchanged ideas?
Not yet. I just learned about this on the news like 3 or 4 days ago. That I didn't realize it had gotten down to a nationwide. It's worse in the Northeast. I know that. Because diesel is used or part of it is used for heating fuel. And so that a lot of heating oil is used back in the Northeast, more so than out here. So I don't know what to expect out here, but just
That
something to have.
issue is in a state of flux right now, isn't
Huh?
it? That issue is in a state of flux. It really, there's just so much fluidity going on with the supply. It may not really be about supply, but about.
It could be about politics
Hold
also.
Politics. It could be
And
politics.
we try to avoid that all day, let's keep up the good work.
And I will, trained in conversion on propane, so if you really need to, I can help.
Yeah, it's interesting because Tillamook started converting to propane. That was one of Doug's big projects, and they're really struggling with it.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of issues with it, so it hasn't gone as smoothly as they hoped it would.
Well, that would be a segue into perhaps not drafting access to fuel into emergency plan.
You know what?
When the old, whatever,
Oh,
you have access to fuel as a part of the emergency plan, but it didn't make it here.
right. And I think that was on the updated
So
one,
the emergency plan,
fuel.
And somehow disaster plan didn't make it either. Oh, disaster planning with,
Yeah.
Okay. excuse me.
This is updated. This is.
Yeah.
yeah, just, if it's okay, moving along to a different one. So on page 2, we have, improving system, which there have been a few things that have been done. But then also on technologies, so we already have the e-fare.
Yep.
And we have, I forget what, the progress is on Wi-Fi, onboard Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, I'm gonna ask that we just completely strike that. There's a lot of problems with Wi-Fi and bandwidth on buses. People will get on the bus and do huge downloads and kill our costs. I mean, our costs would go way up. So I don't know if that's really that important. If we were to do a onboard Wi-Fi, I would say, yeah, let's do it on the inner city route to Portland, but otherwise around town, I wouldn't.
I will say this, the only negative thing I've ever heard against Point Bus is that they have Wi-Fi, we don't. And, but I will also say this, as Plymouth River train, they have Wi-Fi, but they tell you it's,
It ain't reliable.
You can't download you can't download any big files at all.
Oh, really?
They set a limit on that because they don't have that kind of bandwidth. They move around. So you can set it. I think it's 10 megabytes. That you can do. So you want to train maybe.
Yeah, but we didn't.
You didn't use it. I've used it twice and yeah, you can only, you can't download any movies off Netflix.
We went to reading real books that you hold in your hand, you know, with the paper.
Did you have to mark and everything? Michael?
So could we maybe have technology in different places? And not just put them all together, because e-fare, that's done, right?
Right, yeah,
So we
Ethan's
can
done.
take that out.
Charging
Electronic
stations,
charging stations on buses.
and on the new buses that we're gonna be getting, those are already on there, so that's pretty much.
So we can also kind of
Yep.
take it out, okay?
The Wi-Fi, we can look at it where it makes sense.
Let me get some more information.
Maybe, yeah, like explore limits, like bandwidth limits.
I can get a hold of Verizon and find out how. we
Okay,
can do that.
okay, yeah.
And then it says improve administration, what does that mean?
Yeah, what was that?
Improvements.
That was, like, turned me into a robot, I guess. Artificial intelligence, I think that's probably when we were looking for new accounting software, because we were on QuickBooks before.
Oh, that's,
And just so the board knows, we ended up going with AccuFund. When I was down in Tillamook last month for the Nevada meeting, SBA provided a finance person for them temporarily, and she had asked me, what we used, and she called AccuFund a different name. She called it AccuRun, because you want to run as far away from it as you can. And we've seen that. It's a terrible software system.
Why did we go with that one?
That was the recommendation of Tracy at the time. She evaluated 3 different ones. The one that we really wanted was super expensive. But it would have been the best one. And then she ended up going with AccuFund, and it's unfortunate we got it. It's not user friendly. It's so stupid as
Quirky.
when an employee puts in a time off request and it gets approved, you would think you could go back and look on a calendar as a manager and see who's off on this day. There is no calendar for you to go back in. The calendar is there when you make the request, but after that, after it's been approved, that calendar goes away, so you can't see, who you've got on
Have
vacation.
16 other
Which I've got
people
this
on
big 12-month calendar on my wall that I have
Stuff,
to visit
yeah.
right on it, which I wanted to get rid of that. So it's just stupid things like that. It's very cumbersome for accounts payable, unfortunately, so.
Making a PO is
Oh, I won't do it anymore.
a trick.
I
It's
make Kelly do my POs because I almost threw my computer out of the window on the Mercy Drive.
Purchase order.
Huh?
Purchase order.
Yeah.
Anything over 100, we have to have purchase order.
So are we sticking with it and?
Right now we are,
Braving
because-
it out?
We're gonna, but at some point, we're probably gonna start shopping again. Kelly's been kind of looking around, but I'm not ready to
So,
pull a trigger so quickly.
so probably in the next 2 years, do you think that will happen? Like, should we add?
I don't see us
an
doing
item?
it within the next 2 years.
So we should.
We'll just
Put it in
keep going. The improved administration can probably get out of there, because I'm sure that's what.
Unless Donna says she's gonna quit.
Huh?
Unless Donna says she's gonna quit unless you get a new program. Kidding.
That when I was going over this, that I wish we had, is that with this stuff that you give us every month, whether that could have been put down under all the priorities to see where we've been, and we had asked when you that you provide a summary of what you've done for the year, so you can combine
Yeah,
the two of them into one task
right.
and efficiency. So does that sound like a good idea?
That sounds like a great idea.
So then that means that on technologies, we only have the Wi-Fi. That's it.
Yeah, and we could keep something general in there, because you never know what technologies are gonna come up, what we're gonna see.
So maybe we should bring it down to either priority 2 or 3, right?
Yeah.
Because you said
Yeah.
I take it down to 3.
Same.
We got the stuff that we really needed. We've been buying automatic passenger counters until we get our new buses in. That's been on order for a few years now. We haven't been able to use the data from the automatic passenger counters, so we need to have like more than 50% of our buses have those on them, so we can actually use that information. So it's money that we've spent, but.
On-time tracking is
Huh?
done. Isn't our on-time tracking done off of that?
No, it's on-time tracking is done through Swiftly, which is a separate technology we have on the buses, and that's what feeds the transit app, so you know where your bus is at.
That's going,
Yeah.
so it's only give and take, and a couple times I've checked my bus, and it said it was 20 minutes away, and it was actually coming down the street.
Oh, really?
In the summer, it was in the summertime to give it back.
Huh.
It was hard to judge, it's hard to say on. I was on 101, I guess, and it said it was on 101, I said it further away. And this wasn't this year, maybe 1 year in the dark. Oh, it said it wasn't, and bus, really, I don't know if that was a bus that was ahead of it,
That could be,
that was late.
yeah, that could very well
That
be
would
what it
happen
was.
there.
Yeah, that would be a glitch that,
How does it adjust for that in one
well,
on time?
it should, because it should be able to tell you when the next bus is going the direction you want to go. If you're going south and you're standing at Ensign Lane on 101 or Fred Meyer, it should tell you exactly what time the next bus is going to be there that's going that way.
We want the most uncertain places. 20 bus coming from the south and 101, that seems to be most, times I've read the most uncertain place.
Okay.
And that's where you get a lot of bottlenecking, Seaside, Cannon Beach during summer.
Albert, yeah, or south of Seaside, yeah.
I got a question here about, this maybe is in the realm, but, in general about resources, did we already resolve the thing about auditors We're really looking for another.
No,
office.
and, interesting about that, I don't know that we're gonna make any headway in that. Kelly, a couple weeks ago, was down at, Department of Revenue, had a training down in Salem that she went down for. And that was a big topic down there, that, the pool of public auditors has shrank immensely. And
Yeah.
the state is very aware that there is a problem brewing out there. When we did this last RFP and we hired the firm that we have, they were the only respondent, and it went to, I used the Department of Revenue's list, so it went out to, I think, 15 different CPA
But
firms.
we're okay, we've got that person, we've got that.
We still got them, but we're still behind. But
I can attest to that. My wife's a retired CPA. She's been retired for 5 years now. She gets a job request every day.
Oh, I'm sure.
Every day.
I'm sure.
And she's not looking for a job. She's just getting requests. So she told me there's such a shortage of finance and accounting people.
You know, and fortunately, the Secretary of State's office knows about it because they send out automatic letters, you know, if your audit's not in. And they have the authority to pull funding if necessary, but they apparently understand
They're aware.
there's a problem, yeah, so we haven't gotten to that point yet. So,
The one other thing is I would like to know about, we talked about, grant writing and we left that kind of up in the air. That's kind of another resource. We weren't gonna outsource or have a grant writer, but, is that something that we need to be aware of?
no, you know, the way that we're structured with, the federal grants that come down through ODOT, and then we apply to ODOT for the grants. They've got a really simple system. It's called incognito forms that they now use for everything. We don't need a grant writer. It's very easy to use.
So we have access to those
Yeah.
resources when
Yeah,
we need.
we
them.
don't need,
Okay,
we don't,
thanks.
you know, we talked about it at the thing with Jim Knight, but yeah, we don't need that.
Are we responsible?
On the developed route standards, we've already got those
Yep.
taken care of, so we can mark those up.
That's what I did.
Okay.
I did that before.
What about things that aren't on here? What kind of things have you guys been thinking about?
Marketing.
Huh?
Marketing.
Oh, I haven't got there yet. I'm looking at time here. We've got 15 minutes, so.
Shoot.
We didn't go until what?
Marketing, we.
I put most, my mistake.
Three,
I know, but I'm.
It's not on this.
I might have,
Okay, here. it is.
well, anyway,
Open up the packet, page 31.
Oh, on the marking on that, yeah, the RFP hasn't gone out yet, that should,
No, I mean, marketing isn't on it.
no, I
No.
realize that now.
Okay, and so, well, maybe to add a few things,
Yeah, so marketing, we should add in there,
plus some
Where?
subplots.
priority two.
So, okay, let me just say the whole spiel and.
I couldn't go down.
What should be, so under, marketing, to put, market, transportation districts to SDAO as a separate entity.
Say that again, please.
Okay, we're now at large, SDAO, or the right one?
We are at large,
Okay,
right?
and so we certainly, the transit districts are certainly large enough entities.
Not really,
Kathy looked into that.
yeah,
We-
as
we
far as,
She said that she kind of brought it up and she brought the numbers.
and it was
And,
small.
yeah, like we couldn't really request that.
Okay, let me try another tactic. Okay, so although we are small, we're not. Small but essential in terms of we provide all the transits, work, health, visits, recreational. So those are the three, visiting. So those are four major things that of populations especially that don't have the mobility choices that many people have. And so, and we have very specific needs and funding. I mean, most places, districts aren't going to, whatever it is, 60,000, whatever it is for a bus. And so we have capital expenses that are not applicable to most of the districts.
This is true,
Okay,
because like fire departments buy a lot of fire trucks,
okay, but,
ambulances, we buy a
Yeah.
lot of buses.
yeah, but they don't go out every day.
Huh?
They don't go out every day.
Who they? Fire trucks?
Okay.
But like for hours and hours.
Let me put it in, they don't go the distance.
They don't carry people. Okay, one, 2 people.
No, and I think you're preaching to the choir, but it,
Well, I'm just saying that if there's another approach that we work
Yeah.
on it, because that's very important. If they don't consider that.
so that's why we're lucky that we have Kathy working for us and she's on the FDO board, so she's the one that you want to have carry that torch.
Okay.
So
well,
continue that conversation with her.
I think also a way to start is calling out to other transit districts. And kind of say like, hey, let's meet, let's have some type of conversation among us first, get to know each other, get to know what they're doing, and because then that way we could be a little more united. So even if at the SDAO conference, we're not at large, at least we've already bonded a little more and we're more united when we're asking for things.
And one more point, with it in the strategic plan. Oftentimes, public officials and people will think that something is important if it's in your plan. So you really sometimes don't even have to do anything. You just say, well, it's in our plan and we consider this very important. Did I make it? I see Jeff writing this possibility.
Well, I'm gonna word it good for you.
She's
Well, I guess it brings up the point that Jeff is really, this is where we need your help, is to, because you are more intimately involved with all the connectivity and all the opportunities and all, and you do a good job bringing this to us, so that it becomes a part of our priorities. We're not gonna know as much as you know about how all this works statewide,
Sure.
regionally, nationally. So I'm depending on you
Okay.
to help us. with
But
that.
I'm also
Figure that
still
out.
depending on you. That's why I wanted to shift here real quick. What things that aren't on here do you guys think about for our district over the next couple of years? What would you like to see? Sky, you gotta think sky's the limit. What do you want to see?
I would like to have us somehow, if I had $1 million, I would put electronic reader boards on buses.
So that would be under
People
technology.
know,
Say that, right?
they can see that.
Yes,
More than-
and we've done that to some extent, and it does help me as a writer to know when the next bus stop is and where and how long and what time of day it is right now, so that I know I can make my connections.
So those are the, right up by where the driver sits above, that the whole passenger compartment can see, say the next stop is, and it enunciates it also.
That enunciates everything that you're thinking about.
And we're putting those on all the new buses.
We are, and that's perfect. So I just want us to emphasize that. And on the bus stops, I really like seeing a map of wherever I can go. But I would also like to have an option to know where there might be an event of something going on that I might want to go down on the bus. And so a reader board of some kind, or
So one of the things with the new shelters that we've got that we're gonna be installing, the first one down at Sunset Beach, it actually has a weatherproof enclosed bulletin board. It's gonna allow for those types.
Yeah,
of things. So
that's, I would like to see more of that.
The one thing that I don't want to have happen is Mary having to manage a whole bunch of signage with tape. I have a big problem with sign pollution.
I agree.
You know, signs need to be up for, especially just the short informational ones, 2 weeks, and then they're swapped out. Otherwise, it's just a waste of space.
Yeah,
And I don't want it to paste all over the plastic. and stuff.
That's, I like that. It really is good. And if we don't have the money to do it across the board, it would be great just to start incrementally, like, as money allows, to have on a couple of route, really the most traffic used routes, those buses could have those amenities. And starting out with 1 or 2 of the stations, the bus shelters, where we could have that, because that, shows, here's what the future brings.
Yeah, one of the other things you'll see, like when you go to Portland, at some of the major bus stops where there's actually shelters, is they'll have an electronic reader board there where you can do electronic signage. We could look at doing that at some point, not system wide, but those, like you said, those. major
But at
stops.
certain points, we could.
The connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Main ones.
I'd like to see a streetcar in every city.
Yeah. Yes,
A streetcar in every city.
the red.
Well, at least during the seaside train.
The old red.
During the summer months.
No. Period.
But if we get rid of those routes, you don't want to go to microtransit? I thought you wanted to go to microtransit.
Can't use that for my.
You throw out all money on the table. Elon Musk needs to get down there, and get invested in us.
And I particularly don't, you walk into the transit center, done a great job with this, but on the door, what do you see? Stuff. If there's some kind of technical doodad thing, that, there's some magazine that shows how to beautify.
I have not seen a booth that's called Technical Blue
I'm gonna answer that.
I can't remember.
Okay, and that, and then, yes, and the other thing is a thought, and I've seen, like you have, the list of your bus routes in hospitals. And, I've seen it, so it is,
Yeah, we have those out there.
They won't let you put them up. Absolutely not.
They'll hand out a schedule.
Yeah,
But they won't post it.
they will not.
Not
Where
our
does?
hospitals.
Or they're like,
No, we just give them to the staff. I go in and have,
there's not a just
I'm not talking kiosks, I'm talking money stuff, I get it. But
An
it's on the
emergency-
wall.
yeah, emergency room, they have racks, and they'll put them in there.
Providence. That has that. Don't look at me like that.
No, I'm just telling you what, Mary worked very hard with the hospitals, but
Yes.
they won't do it.
No.
really.
Our hospitals.
London. They don't like to have anything from the outside. I'm just saying, they don't like to put, no.
From
Outside
of the
agency, outside service, outside, unless it goes to a department where they can talk to people, but just, I'm talking about Eastside Providence, there's no place to put like our schedules. Up, out in the shelter, out in front, definitely. To the staff that's at the intake, at the intake or the,
That's a community act.
and the clinic at the desk, they'll take them, but they will not post them, they will.
Because there's that whole section there off of the front door that's lots of community action.
Yes.
It seems to
Yep.
be a good fit.
Yep,
Okay, so another possibility is this, is like the theaters, when they have programs, and you can put in,
Public announcements.
Yes, announcements.
About, bus schedules, you can get to the theaters, or movie theaters, live theater, hotels.
See, what we prefer that to do is, if we were to do that, do PSAs at the movie theaters, is to direct them to the app on the phone.
Oh, okay.
Because we want to get away from, we've done a good job getting away from paper schedules as much as possible, getting people used to using their phones as their source of information, because that's the best spot for it.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like doing the way of the buffalo again, I think cinemas are kind of, down a court, but, the PSAs, it is like a captive audience, it is really.
And I don't know what
it'd be something-
PSAs at theaters cost. I have no idea. It might be worth a phone call.
it Used to be kind of big, when you advertise for local
Well,
events.
people watch movies and TV on their phones now. I do. And we could look into paying for that type of ads.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it with,
Ads on
Yeah.
phones that are local,
Uh-huh.
so that even if somebody comes to visit, or if they're just live here,
Yep.
that from time to time on Facebook, well, I say Facebook, but I don't know if TikTok does any ads. But if we could get those in there, just short little snippets. Talking
Well, I
about
can
the
mention that.
so I'm gonna
website.
put that under marketing,
Yeah.
electronic PSA.
And one other thing we talked about previously that's on these priorities was the park and ride concept. We still want to put them on that. Is that something we want to try to develop?
That's something.
Well, it really hinges on what we're gonna do with microtransit,
Yeah,
Do it.
because that's almost a competing process.
I don't think
You're
we
gonna-
have the population. as far as pride, frankly.
Okay.
I think
We have a couple limited ones that,
Yeah.
like the Seaside Cinemas, one that.
we don't have what they have in Beavers and Hillsborough, all over, these big lots. And park and ride is a cool idea, but it almost requires you to have a minimum daily ridership. I don't know if we have that anywhere.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Would you
The
have? that in
distance, like if I drive my mile and a half to the bus stop, I'm just gonna drive into town.
We're already in the.
I'm already in my car, it's already warm by the time I
You
get
know,
there. I'm
You know, a mile and a half is not that far to walk.
Unless it's raining like yesterday.
No, you're looking outside, it's not raining right now.
Or if you wanna run errands afterwards, like, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to work, but afterwards I wanna go shopping. I wanted to go grocery shopping. So, yeah, I wanna have my car so I can put stuff. in.
The other thing,
Getting people out of cars.
the other thing is when
That's Kathy's job. I wish you'd work on that.
I try, when I'm coming into town, I have a bunch of stuff to do. I try not to come into town for one thing.
Right. Yeah. I'm the same
I'm
way. when I
really
first-
trying, except for yesterday, I did it just for you guys.
so I feel like we should drop that out of our priorities.
Take, or,
Take it out.
okay. It's under priority 2.
Yeah.
Parks and park.
Other things that aren't unlisted.
On the improved appearance, we've got the buses appearance looks really good. Could we take that one off?
I think so.
And shelters we're still working with, but the facilities look really well.
Well, I disagree. I think the transit center is really tired.
Okay.
It needs a pressure wash and a paint.
It's pain.
Yeah.
Around the building. At least we can take the buses.
Now, there's a concept. I-
Go
we
for
could-
dancers.
We could put a mural on the building. We don't have to have a whole. big
I
one.
asked her that
We
one.
can have some little ones.
Huh?
I had to do that a long time ago, a long time.
Aren't there a lot of restrictions for murals in the historic district though?
Well, I was gonna try to get a grant. There was a grant that was available.
We were told on commercial, we were told, but now that building that we used to be in on commercial has all that
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
And I don't know how if they just put it there.
Yeah,
Which one are you talking about?
It's the arcade now.
by the
Oh,
tattoo,
yeah.
by the tattoo place,
Oh, I know where that.
Astoria Coffee.
Across from Charlie's
Okay.
bookstore. Because we were there on the corner when we first started.
Oh, okay.
What?
And it said something about a mural on that.
You're in the start.
And they said that there was a bunch of.
I believe so. I don't know how old does it have to
All
be?
that geometric design.
No, I was looking at a grant to put a picture on the side that was historical. It would be a historical mural on the side, and there was a grant that was available through Travel Oregon. And Kate was up here, went to a luncheon at the Liberty, anyway. But I know at that time, there's a lot of restrictions in what you could put up there, but historical was accepted, but Yeah.
So go with the
Yeah.
experience, son, and train this.
Good.
That would be nice.
Okay,
but
What are these guys?
Joe. So I know we're working on it, but I dream of the day where we have the shelter at the Costco. Like I've been dreaming about that for 6 years.
Where,
shelter where?
In some
The,
lane.
the Costco that I forget what we
the
call that.
NC Lane
Yeah,
project?
the NC
Yes.
Lane.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's coming.
Have that
It's coming.
and be beautiful and then be out of there. Yeah, so that one needs.
Not gonna happen this year.
And it's,
Not gonna-
that one
Huh?
We're running out of them.
Then my other dream, and I brought it up before and I understand, is the website. I know that because we have the 3 or the 4 agencies and that it's like all in there and that it's won awards. It's not user friendly. It's not easy. It's old fashioned. There's the tabs are not easy to navigate. If I know nothing about the transit, how it works, and I want to go to the airport, it's hard to actually figure out. And that's on a laptop, which is more better organized. But then if I pull up the website on a phone, it's not easy. It's not
Yeah,
very
it's not-
user friendly.
yeah.
Yeah, so like,
It's not,
one of my dreams would be that we have a beautiful website that is user intuitive, that when you could just type like, where do you want to go?
So does the board want us to step away from Nawada's website and do our own and give up our Nawada
If
partnership?
it's possible, yeah, but I understand that it's a whole partnership, so I don't know if that's possible, but if we could have our own,
We could dissolve Nawada.
that would be
I
wonderful.
would definitely warn against it.
If somebody, if somebody wants to go in there, it's like, okay, where is your starting point and where do you want to go? And that they could just type, I'm in Seaside and I want to go
The
to.
trip planner is
Claflin.
right on the front page.
I know, but it's not easy to find.
It's
Like,
it's very good.
it's,
Right
yeah,
there.
it's,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but
Oh.
What if Nawada just improved the whole system? I mean,
Here's
just
what I
the-
think,
the
guys,
government-
I think Water designs a website for website. They could probably ask them, we need to be more like an app. I think that's what you need to approach Water on.
Right here.
That's one of the designs, but I think most designs that work are the ones that behave like apps. And, because the other day I was gonna try to find a bus schedule on our website. I eventually did find it. But I assure you, if it was an app, it would be easier to find and. I
it's
just
a lot
think-
of lettering, it's a lot of reading, reading.
So you'd like an app
reading.
rather than a
You
website?
get lost.
I think a lot of
Yeah,
You go to
Windows-
Tillamook.
Windows 10, they think everything's smarter, but really, most people see things, and most things you see computerized are app, or app, not necessarily an app.
App-like.
but Sort of an app
The-
look
the
to it,
design,
and
yeah.
performance, and more performance more like an app than the website. And I think our current company can do that.
no, they
You don't
have
think
to,
they can do it?
well, I know that designing websites, because, programming languages evolve so quickly and that kind of thing.
Right.
It's easier to start from scratch than modifying something like that.
So
Yeah.
your other option, and your better option, probably if you want to use an app, is just use the transit app. You can make a trip plan on your transit app.
And that much I agree.
Yeah, but
there's
it is
people-
very
the hold on, people still are using the app as far as the trend.
Yeah, so if we could kind of have our own.
Talk to the partners about it.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna advocate that we get out of Nawada.
no, I don't want to, that's
I'm
not
not
what
gonna
I'm saying.
advocate that we.
No, I
throw
think
away
it's
the
important.
website.
It's important to have that partnership, but
So what don't we want on the website then?
I would like it not to be so letter driven, that anything you need is probably in there, but you have to start reading. What do I need? What do I need?
So you just want it to be a trip planner?
To maybe be more visual, so that when you first pull it up, it's, what do you want to do? I want to plan my trip. I want to look at a schedule. I like make it more,
kind of steps, and it's like, oh, I want to do this, and then it sends you to a different page. And then you select, oh, and then I want a different page. But the way it is right now, everything is on that first page, and you have to read until you find what you need. And it's difficult to kind of navigate it. So I think what Charles is saying when he says about an app, it's a little bit more like that, that it's easier navigation. Kind of you just press here, it sends you to a next page. And then you, and
So
then
some
you
things are more important to find right away.
same.
The name of the commissioner, I like for it to be hard to find. I don't want- but that probably not the last thing. People don't go on a website trying to find the commission.
So here's what I'm gonna suggest. We need to be in the room at Astoria and have this on the screen.
Mhm.
Because I need to know better what you're talking about, because I'm seeing things that make sense to me. So-
You know what, it's everything that's on the front page is essential, but you cannot visually, it just, that, not everybody thinks that way, is they can't, they need to be guided into it, and it needs to start out.
Again,
very-
so let's put this on the agenda for,
Yes.
See, here's the way, I think also is this, if you know a website, it's very convenient, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I cannot find this. Most people on the website will be there, have never seen it. And so that's what you understand. I think you have the stuff that's the most important should be on the website.
so what's the number one most important? thing?
Schedules.
Okay, okay.
Yes, schedules and trips.
Okay. Time out. We can't do this now because I can't show you the screen.
Yeah.
I know they're.
But yeah,
We're gonna look at it together, because I'm
Put it on the big screen.
following you.
Not on.
And I would just look. If you have the next member meeting for the consortium, see what their reaction, some of their customers, how they view the website. Okay?
So I don't know if it's on here, but there was, we were improving, travel time with congestion and construction,
The summer schedules.
but it was more than something. I wanted to do this with the whole thing, and that is, maybe this is being done, what I'm going to say, maybe more forcefully, is to work with agencies and cities, counties, for the particular obstacles, this is in terms of construction, that they would be improved, for example, around the roof behind the movie theater, to get, say the movie theater and the city to help with construction.
I'm not following you.
Okay, well,
Are you talking about Astoria or Seaside?
this is an example, seaside, it would be for everyone, I mean, every place. Because, for example, I took the Lower Columbia, and I always get napkins and mixed up. But anyway, you make a right turn, and it's really bumpy, and you're losing time, bumping, and then you're losing time backing up. So that the areas such as that, such as behind the movie theater, that's not gravelled around that station,
Big
and
holes.
there are other places that you could get a nearby business, the city, county, the state, to have a list of these things to improve the.
So access to the bus stop.
Road conditions?
Improve access to the bus stop.
And to get all these entities together, because one of the things is a rider that is very important to many, is that you get there on time. And so I've had to take the bus and haven't done it recently, but if I have to be there at 9, I'll take the 7, which I'm not real happy about. And if you're working, unfortunately, employers really don't care. The bus encountered a problem. They're more sympathetic to cars, but not buses. So it seems that up to us to work together to make the ride easier and faster with these things that could be resolved.
Yeah,
For money.
we did that with Route 101 because we expanded it greatly to where it was what, 4 times? Well, it had 26-minute headways, but then our drivers sort of cut that out.
Yeah, I understand that. also, in my opinion, you know, try not to think about bus drivers and some frustrating, but anyway, other things, because once you do get bus drivers, well, you just missed a pot of money. Because you go, well, I do it because we don't have the drivers, but to start thinking about certain areas that you could all work together to get some money. And the reason also I had brought up microtransit, which I'll say again, is that I'm wondering if you would get more drivers if they just had to do microtransit.
Essentially, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
That's not, we'd have to negotiate with the union as well, too, so, because we don't have a separate class for drivers, for non-CDL drivers.
Oh, interesting.
But that's not insurmountable. I mean,
No, it just-
they're used to
It
doing
would
that.
need to
Yeah.
just be discussed.
so that's
Okay,
my spiel.
okay.
So did we go through the entire,
I think we kind of touched base on, is there any area we left? I don't think so.
Yes.
Just this one, on page 2 at the top, improving system, improved lighting, bus shelters, road on time performances and amenities. So road on time performances, we mentioned it on another
Yeah.
one.
We've done that, we've done pretty good on that, 'cause that was the
That's
schedule,
done. Lighting at bus shelters,
still ongoing,
still ongoing,
Yeah.
and then amenities,
still ongoing.
still ongoing.
What do you mean about road on time? I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
Our time, being, the buses being on time are a lot better than they were.
Because that's on
what-
priority 1 benchmark, so it's already in there.
Always, in my opinion, have to be working on that.
Same.
Okay, and that's why you should still
Leave it on there.
leave it on.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Because you're saying a bumpy road.
Or attending a meeting.
I would put on there just continuously, review route on time performance. Yeah, because right now, we're doing it every 6 months, we change the schedules for the summer, we change them for the non-summer. But during that time, we take the information we gathered during that period of time and looked at our on-time performance for each route, and then we make those adjustments every 6 months. So we're doing that.
But I guess what I'm asking, which is why I brought up the construction, is how more can we improve time?
We can only, well, we can really only improve based on the most immediate data that we got, that we collected during that, like during this recent summer months. We'll take that data come springtime and incorporate that into new schedules.
Well, supposing you discover that there's a turn that takes up a lot of time, a lack thereof.
Discovering it in
That's-
summer,
that's-
discovering it in.
That's what our on-time tracking will let us know. Yeah, because it's by stop. We can track by stop our on-time performance.
Can I add an experience that I had that where the bus was late?
No,
Oh. Okay.
Whoops.
The bus was late, so I jotted in and I was 2 minutes late punching in on the clock. And, we have this thing on the clock that Atlanta knows when we punch in, of course. And I went to the manager and they said, it's okay, we've already got it. And I said, how did you already get back that the bus was late? And they said, we were watching on this app, the transit app. And when the bus was, so you don't have an incident, you don't have to worry about all this. We've already covered it."
that's great.
So
That's a story to tell.
because, employers should, always accommodate the people who, it was not their responsibility. They weren't involved.
It's not their fault.
Understand some employers, and that's why I'm really pushing
Yes,
this.
Julie, should though. If their employees are taking public transportation,
They should be supported.
Flexible. Supportive and flexible.
at least they do for me.
But that's why I express on time.
We will never be 100% on time.
I understand that.
We'll never have 10-minute headway either.
I think systematic, I think even the drivers are concerned about their own time. So I think everywhere along the way, people are thinking on time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not criticizing
And I think that, but I don't think they get to a point and say, okay, we're on time today, so what, we're about that. I think it's every day, right?
Oh, yeah.
Every day.
They watch all the time.
Because you never know what's gonna happen out there. All it takes is one wreck.
You get to Wednesday, what,
Wait,
on time today, we're about that anymore. And
What's that?
Some driver says, it's Wednesday, I've been on time all day, I don't worry about that anymore.
Yeah,
Then
no.
Thursday comes.
You know, that's something when you, Jeff, or anyone of us, is tasked to talk about transportation district, is, we really encourage employers to encourage their employees to take public transportation, and that's a really big issue is, it's
And that's-
not perfect. I mean, when you look at a year at a glance, how often an employee is late because of the bus problems, it really still pencils out as an advantage for them to do.
And that's one thing Kathy does in her role of transportation options between the three counties is meeting with those major employers. Because that's what she's constantly pushing is transportation, options like transit, like van pools, all those kinds of things.
And they're not gonna get it by themselves.
I want to extend this conversation, but I thought it was, see, to me, the employers, if you want to give a benefit away, how about telling a new employee, we'll pay for your monthly bus pass?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, to me,
Absolutely.
then they're on board. If they're doing that, then they're on board. So perhaps they should, it may be a way to even get employees, because if they have that, they'll be sympathetic to the schedule of the bus. And so,
And that's what Kathy's been working on. That. She's been working on it with employers. There was a couple of years ago, and I don't know where it ended up, but like the Astoria Golf and Country Club, they wanted to do that. Can we get discounted passes for our employees? And so Kathy was working with them. And I don't know off the top of my head if she can even hear me. I could chime in on that, but I'm always willing to set up a program, and I don't care the size of the organization. It doesn't have to be the hospital, it doesn't have to be Home Depot. It could be somebody that has, 6 employees.
right, you benefit.
But what
they
what-
tie into talking.
Yeah.
They tie into.
And what happened, she just reminded me, she chatted the pandemic happened. Because she was making some great headway in that respect. So.
But it's something that, because it's available, I mean,
Yeah.
back east where I live.
Oh, yeah.
It's a common thing.
It's
Yeah.
important.
Hospitals,
Years.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we do it in Portland a lot.
It's one of those things, again, I go back to saying, I just want butts in the seats. Because, some of our funding is based on butts in the seats. You look at our 5311, 60% of it is butts in the seat, the other 40% is mileage, revenue mileage.
That's why the airport extension might
Uh-huh,
help a lot with that.
yeah, there you go.
And it's a cycle, because then, that's gonna perk up, the conversation about, childcare is, it's all interconnected.
Sure.
Everything is connected to everything else, because that will be incentives for us to do what we need to do about childcare, trying to get them close to transit. This is off into the future, but it's worth it for us to talk about it.
Right. Very cool.
Anything else? Are we good? Does everybody want to go? Do we want to talk about it?
I'm talked out.
All right.
So I'm leaving early. I thought we were-
I have to pick up at 5.
Thank you.